Hello everybody and welcome to the Better Call Saul Season 1 through 5 review and discussion. I am joined in this discussion with Connor and Bob, and I think it is quite the discussion. I'm very excited for you guys to hear this, and I am very proud of the Breaking Bad discussion we did about a year ago. Please go check out that video if you haven't seen it already. It's not a must for this video, but we do reference it a lot and build on top of the points and discussions that we have in that video. And I want to thank everybody for making that video, at least for my standards, blow up. Trust me, it's my highest viewed video by a long shot. So I want to thank everybody for doing that, and we're joined by the exact same people for this discussion. Despite that video's popularity, I do look back on it and cringe a bit because I think it could just be a little bit better in its quality. And I think this discussion is much better in how we talk with each other and the actual quality of the sound, audio, and discussion itself. I do want to apologize for some minor background noises, mostly on me. If you're wearing headphones, you'll probably definitely hear them. I just live in a busy house, so I apologize for that. But for the most part, it's not super bad, and I tried to edit it down. But if you hear it, I do apologize. That is on me. The last and obvious point I want to make is there's going to be spoilers for all of Better Call Saul, seasons 1 through 5, and the entirety of Breaking Bad, as well as El Camino. So make sure you've seen all of that before enjoying this discussion. And again, I would recommend checking out the Breaking Bad discussion first, but regardless, it is time we get going. So without further ado, enjoy. All right. We're all here to finally discuss Better Call Saul, seasons 1 through 5. Let's get it going. I'm here with Connor.
Hey.
And the one and only Bob.
Hey.
The trio's back. We're all here to talk about Better Call Saul. How are we all doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm
pretty good.
I'm embarrassingly excited to talk about some Better Call Saul. I feel like it's been on my mind. I'm kind of obsessed. To prove that, I'm literally wearing. Is that mirrored, by the way?
Nice.
Is that...
No, it's the correct direction. Yep.
Yeah, that's the
University of American
he
Samoa
wears,
sweatshirt.
and also my phone case. If you can see that.
Yeah, is a shot of Kim and Jimmy leaning against the parking garage.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And my
is that
desktop.
Season 1 or 2, I think.
That's the first episode. Yeah.
First episode.
Oh, it's the first episode.
Yeah, and then my desktop background is them like driving, just on loop. It's a video of them driving on loop.
So you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
You are the most prepared out of the three of us.
I'm a big old fan.
You love it. You love it. How you doing, Bob? How are you
I'm doing
today?
pretty good.
You excited?
Yes, very.
Connor.
It's been a while since I actually watched it, but when I did watch it, I watched it straight through. So I'm definitely ready to talk about this.
All right. Well, what's interesting about this one is we are talking about only seasons 1 through 5 because season 6 is not out yet. It's currently in production. So, it would be kind of weird to discuss that. Although I guess we are kind of discussing it a bit, but at least concretely it's impossible. So we don't really have an...
Unfortunately, I've never done this for anything else. I'm usually so avoidant of leaks, but I have been a leak chaser just to get my fill of Better Call Saul. So I'm not going to be able to predict as much because I'm a bit too informed, unfortunately. I don't want to spoil it.
Oh, geez.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
All right.
I promise I won't reveal anything. Unless asked.
Okay. Let's ask. But with Breaking Bad, it was a concrete series. We discussed the ending. It definitely was this holistic series overlook. That isn't really the case with Better Call Saul because we're missing, the ending, or at least the end of the end. I guess, the last season could have been the build up to the end. That's what it definitely felt like. But regardless of that, there's still so much to talk about. It feels like these 5 seasons have so much densely packed content, underlying messages. You can agree with me or disagree on this statement. We'll start with the statement and then we'll get to the topics. Do you guys feel like Better Call Saul is one of the most at least like I know it's like when I say mainstream, I know it's not as popular as Breaking Bad, but like one of the biggest mainstream TV shows that also happens to be one of the most subtle in its content because
It's
I feel like
it's very subtle.
right
Yeah.
yeah, like everything about this show, like, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of salty in Breaking Bad. I feel like they have a lot of like bombastic moments to like, put that in the front and have a lot of subtle meaning behind it. This show, in every single sense of the word, whether it be in its filmmaking, whether it be in its characters, whether it be in its themes, all feel just incredibly, incredibly subtle. So much so that the show really asks you to do a lot of the work to think about the show and divulge in it way more than Breaking Bad. At least that's what I think. It's my take from it.
Yeah.
I agree, definitely.
I remember the showrunner Peter Gould saying that if Breaking Bad hadn't existed, this type of show wouldn't have been possible. I think he worded it: Breaking Bad trained the viewer to really think about every detail mattering, and to the plot, to the story, to the characters. And he feels that this is kind of Breaking Bad takes it to kind of a different level in terms of subtlety and
You mean Better Call Saul?
or yeah, Better Call Saul.
Sorry, that's what I
different. No, it's absolutely fine. Yeah, without Breaking Bad, it feels like the Breaking Bad trained the viewers to kind of look at Better Call Saul
Right,
in
right.
in a similar fashion and dig
Right.
even deeper sometimes. It's again, it's hard to compare because they're very different shows going for very different things. And so
Oh
it's kind
yeah.
of an unfair.
Right.
Yeah, but I kind of agree with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Just saying, like Breaking Bad compared to Better Call Saul is kind of like, in a lot of ways, like impossible. Although I do have a segment where we probably are going to do some of that. But yeah, it's very much its own show, and it's very much going for its own thing. But it,
Yeah, I feel like calling it a prequel to Breaking Bad is doing a disservice to Better Call Saul.
Bob, I love you because that is the first topic I wanted to bring up. Was Better Call Saul as a prequel, and this is probably the topic that involves least amount of discussion of Better Call Saul. This is a personal thing. I might like say this, and you guys go, "Yeah, I have nothing to say to that and nothing to add to it." But for me, prequels usually don't work for me. Just generally speaking, and it's not even necessarily because it's like I know what happens. And sometimes that could be the case because they'll lean into something way too heavily, and you're like, well, I already know how this resolves, so the build-up just doesn't work. But mostly for me, it's just prequels. Just generally speaking, there seems to be this like magical essence missing from, or you know what it is? It's its uniqueness. It feels like prequels never really stand on their own or ask to be watched really separate from the original product. It feels like the original product be released and then release a prequel on it, and the prequel's enjoyment comes from your enjoyment of the original source material. That could not be farther from the case from Better Call Saul. Not to say I would absolutely say you should watch Breaking Bad first, but Better Call Saul is one of the prequels that I've ever seen that stands on its own and relies the least amount on Breaking Bad I could ever imagine. Because going into this, I really thought this show was gonna really lean on the core and the essence of Breaking Bad, and it does not. It points at it, it will reference it, but it like stands on its own so proudly and confidently. It is easily my favorite prequel that I've ever seen, which really, when I think about it, isn't saying much, but is also saying a lot.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I thought I had like a really good example of a prequel that I liked as well, but I can't. But I mean, Better Call Saul for me has got to be the best example. Yeah, going into it, I totally thought because the first pitch was going to be that it was a 30-minute comedy, where Saul Goodman does wacky, zany cases, and it's kind of a procedural, case of the week type thing. And I'm very glad they didn't do that. I'm glad that they went with the same type of 40-minute to hour long drama. And I had such low expectations going into the show when I first watched it because I was like, the lawyer from Breaking Bad. Yeah, I think it really, really avoids tons of the tropes that prequels tend to fall into, which is very impressive in its own right.
Yeah, a lot of times with prequels, knowing where you're going, it hurts a lot, like with any kind of dramatic story beats. But in this case, with Better Call Saul, I think it helps to know where he's going because it adds to the tension of like what is going to happen, like how is he going to end up in all the situation he ends up in. And it gives us a sense of dread, like I know where he's going to end up, but like I don't want it to happen. So it's very good in handling it like that.
Yeah, I think it's like such a rich and interesting, and we'll get to Jimmy himself very soon, but it's a rich and detailed examination on I think not one but two specific characters from Breaking Bad. It's the end point. We know where the end point is, but it's less of building up to an event and more building up characters, more building up where characters end up. And it's just so interesting to see where these characters started because, and those characters, of course, are Jimmy and Mike, and how contrast, like how when you first see them, how contrasting they are to their first roles, whether it be like Jimmy, who isn't even named, only referred to once as Jimmy in Breaking Bad, a whole different name, but his first scene, he's practicing in a bathroom, practicing like this case. Smash that with like all the sort of like shady business practices that are going on in Breaking Bad. It's like an immediate contrast. But I think even a starker contrast is you see Mike in Breaking Bad as like this ruthless, violent puppet is not a fair word of Gus, but worker, I guess, for Gus. And then in this, you see him. He's working at a booth, a parking station. And it's just such a
tickets.
Yeah, it's such a stark contrast that you're almost like, how did these characters get here? And what I like about the show so much is it's not necessarily how did they get in the positions they are, but how did their characters get to where they are. And it's not like the show immediately answers that. And in a lot of ways, 5 seasons in some ways you can see the pieces, but we're still like, how?
Right.
Especially for Jimmy. Like, it's still like, how did they get here? How did their characters get here? And there's like, clearly they have one big puzzle piece that they're holding on to very tightly. And it's going to be very interesting to see where that lands. I'm very glad they didn't jump the gun and just didn't cave in and make these characters who they are in Breaking Bad, and then just have events lead up to that, and not pull the trigger too quick. Let it really marinate for what has been 5 seasons now.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember it's so weird at first to see Mike doing everything he possibly can to avoid killing somebody. I mean, obviously he kills the 2 cops in Philadelphia, but because of his feelings on his son and not wanting to, continue that type of corruption, I guess. And also Jimmy, on the other hand, I remember part in season 2, he fakes a bit of evidence, the squat cobbler, and Kim's like, yeah, you can't do that. And it's that's so minor compared to what's happening in even Better Call Saul, the latest episodes.
Right.
Really, it ramps up so subtly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Breaking Bad is also a character drama, but this show is like almost multiple character dramas going on at the same time. Like, I feel like the subtlety and nuance of Walter White in Breaking Bad exists, and not to say that other characters in the show aren't nuanced, but it feels like in a lot of ways that level of nuance not only exists within Jimmy, but exists within Kim and exists within Mike. Like, it exists in more than one character. Like, it feels like there's so many characters that have so many subtle motivations and subtle character shifts and changes and inner conflicts. And I guess we'll get to the characters. We have actually a good amount to discuss. There's a lot of very interesting characters in the show, like Breaking Bad. But I guess before we get to that, just really quick, I want to talk about the cinematography, the colors, the stuff I love to talk about. I think in a lot of ways, the cinematography is just leaps and bounds better than Breaking Bad, which is saying something. Because I think Breaking Bad has some of the best cinematography I've seen in a TV show. Better Call Saul does so much with its camera and its shots and its visual storytelling, whether it be sequences and montages, or whether it be like when they do this twice. With sequences that are beautiful and elegant, like the split screen sequence with Jimmy and Kim. There's so many like incredible creative cinematography and colors in this show. It just blows my mind, because I really thought this could not top Breaking Bad. But not to say like it tops Breaking Bad, it's better. Not to put down Breaking Bad, but that statement I had to make it just because it is so hyperbolic, but it's also just so true. at least in my mind. I love everything about this show and its technical aspect. The thing is, though, for me, Breaking Bad was a little easier to read, especially in like its colors. Like I felt like I was just a little smarter when I watched the show, and I just got dumber. I don't know, but like I would watch the show and be like, oh yeah, like I definitely think I understand the, or at least I would think I understand the symbolic nature of colors, or put my own spin on it. This show is so subtle, and it gives you just a little bit to chew on. And I am just always like, I don't know what that means. And the same with shots. I'm like, I don't know what that shot means. But are there any, I guess, cinematography moments or shots or colors or scenes that really stand out to you guys?
Too many.
Yeah. That's why I didn't name any.
Yeah. The overall themes, and I didn't pick up on this. There's a YouTuber called Illogical that I'll share with you. He does some of the craziest breakdowns of these episodes, I believe starting with season 4. He talks a lot about the colors of yellow and blue, and that yellow represents the kind of the crime, and blue represents the more lawful side. It's a general rule, right? It doesn't always stick to that because you can't avoid colors like that. It's
right. Yeah,
still a show with a budget and everything. Time
I
constraints.
can remember Kim wearing blue a lot in the show.
Yeah,
or I might just be making that in my mind. You said that, and that like triggered a bunch of memories.
Well, a couple moments that come to mind is at the end of season 5, episode 1, when Jimmy. I know this is jumping ahead, but this is a specific moment. Jimmy is. I'm trying to remember the specifics. Kim is talking to a guy who doesn't want to go to trial, but going to trial is the best thing for him, I believe.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And she, at the end of the episode, she ends up going with Jimmy's scam. And she retreats back to a blue hallway, and she kind of takes a breather, kind of retreating back to get all in. You could argue that the pee that I've heard this comparison, the pee that Jimmy drinks, that's yellow. He's internalizing now. You talking about that whole Bagman episode is kind of a transformation for Jimmy's character in a lot of ways. Yeah, and I've heard it argued in a gross way, the symbolism of the pee, drinking, not only being in the crime world, but having to drink, take the nasty with the good, essentially. I think the colors of the suits.
That pee analogy just blew my mind.
Oh yeah, there's tons of stuff like that. I gotta share this YouTube channel real fast.
And
I'm gonna forget.
His cup is also yellow.
It is yellow.
One
yeah.
That ends with a bullet hole. He also just wears yellow in general. In Breaking Bad, he wears a lot of yellow.
Yeah, check out that channel after we're done. It's really, really good stuff.
I'll put the link in the description.
Speaking of the cup, this is not colors, but it just popped in my mind. There's so many little details that I'm gonna have to. When he's talking to the two guys who were going crazy with 50% off, he's in season 5. He's constantly covering the second with his index finger. The second best lawyer, the little second that she drew, he's constantly covering that with his finger. It's very intentional when you notice it.
I never noticed that.
There's a lot of details.
That's the thing about this show is like, you can just, and I feel like this show is just generally a lot more not nuanced, but a lot more culty, and it feels like much more of a cult sort of classic show. While Breaking Bad, I could just type in Breaking Bad color, and then it's like, here you go. Not to say that this discussion doesn't exist, but it's a lot less prevalent. Stuff like that I never heard, and this is just blowing my fucking mind.
You're gonna love that channel, I promise you. He stretches sometimes. There's stuff I don't agree with, but it's interpretation, right? It's interpretation of symbolism.
That's the fun of it. Yeah, that's
interpretation is some of my favorite parts of Better Call Saul. Discussing, like trying to figure out stuff.
Of course, that's kind of what we're doing in some ways, I guess. What about you, Bob? What do you think about the cinematography of the show? What are some of your favorite shots, scenes, moments?
I know there's a lot of them. I'm having trouble thinking of any off the top of my head that like particularly stand out. Back to Bagman, the whole way that whole first sequence is shot with like everything falling behind him and like losing stuff and having to pick it up, like that was just incredible.
Right. I think season 5 has some of the best. Season 5. Most of the stuff we talked about is in season 5. Also, the ice cream cone scene with the ants, that's in season 5.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I got a whole rant about ice cream when you're ready for it. There's a lot of ice cream in season 5, not just that scene.
Yes.
They talk.
Yes.
Yeah. The sprinkles and all that stuff.
I noticed that. Yeah. Oh man, should I add an ice cream section? Well, you know
Sure,
what?
yeah.
No, I have a whole section at the end called side notes where we'll just like, all
Yeah.
right, what did we miss? We
Oh,
can bring
I'm
up ice
gonna
cream then.
go off
I know.
about the fish tank and the ice cream
Oh yeah, the
and the
fish tank.
bottle, the top of the bottle and the the blue kind of I don't remember what it's called, but
Oh, it's so good. Viewers look
yeah.
forward to that. That's gonna be exciting. All right. You know what? Forget it. Scratch it. We gotta get to where it counts, and that's the characters. We're gonna go kind of like we did with the first discussion, where we kind of go through each character. Although on that show we did a lot more like character relationships, and we'll cover that here. But I just kind of want to talk about some individual characters and kind of analyze them, and it kind of goes from most complex to, I guess, like not to say, I guess least complex for lack of a better term. So we're gonna start off with the big man himself, Mr. Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman. Oh boy, where to start with Jimmy?
Spent too much thinking about this guy.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, here's what I will say. I think Jimmy is a character like Walt does things that ultimately frustrate me, and I'm like, oh Saul, like please, please. And something I noticed with Jimmy is, and I know I'm not gonna compare the two shows, but I feel like this needs to be mentioned because in Breaking Bad, when I watched it, Walt was sort of manipulating people around him. And if it was very sinister, and I mentioned a point where Walt manipulated me at the end of season 4, with the whole Brock thing, and that like sort of like made me like get duped. Better Call Saul, Jimmy rather, at this point. Well, actually, it will end with Saul. At this point in the show, he's not necessarily. I mean, he's manipulating, but he's much more of a conman. He's much more of a selling damaged goods, for lack of a better phrase. And the point that did it for me was at the end of season 4, where he first reveals he's changing his name to Saul, where he has that speech about his brother, who obviously died at the end of season 3, and he is basically trying to get reinstated as a lawyer, and he goes on this whole speech and moment about about Chuck rather, and it hit me, and it really like impacted me so much, and I was just like, this character, he has that in him still. He still has that part of him in him where he hasn't lost himself completely. He hasn't become a full con man yet. He still has, Jimmy is still there. And it was that moment at the end where I felt like I was shoulder to shoulder with Kim when he says, "Oh, those suckers bought it. Oh, yeah. They ate it right up." And I'm like, holy shit, I ate it right up. I bought that. And that was the moment for me when I was just like, Jimmy is, and we'll get to this when we talk about Chuck, in a lot of ways, everything Chuck describes, maybe not as villainous, and I think we'll talk when we get to Chuck about his role in how he shaped Jimmy. But Jimmy, for me, just feels like one of the characters that I root for. I don't feel like bad rooting for him, and I'm always hoping he does the right thing, but as a prequel, I know he won't. And it's just constant disappointment. But it's that disappointment that makes his character so fucking good.
Yeah, I agree with a lot what you said. I wasn't personally tricked by the season 4 ending, but I know a lot of people were.
And just smarter than me, I guess.
No. I mean, no. I was blindsided by season 4 Breaking Bad. That was crazy to me.
You're right. No, but it's much easier to see the writing on the wall with Jimmy in that scene than it is with Walt. And I think that has to do with perspective. But that being said, no, I got suckered into it, and I'm just a sucker. Emotional scenes.
I absolutely did get suckered by it too. Like I legitimately thought that Jimmy was going into an emotional tirade, basically about his brother, and then to just turn it on its head like that was just
that's brilliant stuff.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it was his best pitch.
Yeah. Speaking of the word sucker, that word is used very specifically throughout the scenes. It's used when describing his father. It's used when describing the two guys, the printer place that he, you two suckers, I feel bad for you, after he gets them to offer the job. It's used against the people in this scene, you see those suckers, that one guy was crying, he had actual tears. And then it was used when Kim was saying that you made me the sucker again. And she uses the word again which I don't actually think Jimmy picks up on that part because I don't think he actually realizes too much how much impact that had on Kim.
Right. This is
The
so difficult.
Yeah, it's those are the examples I can think of. It's used very specific ways that well, when I'm talking about Kim, I'll get into that very later. But yeah, again, Jimmy has a very very definitive view on suckers and people that he can con. It's kind of a messed up. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think Jimmy is such a complex character because to simply label him as, he's the conman, which he is, that is his role, or at least the role he has in Breaking Bad. And I guess, like, in a lot of ways, like, he is this, like, you know salesman, conman sort of character, but it adds so much nuance to that caricature, and it makes you sort of like, it discovers his roots of that, whether it be from his, we could be from his upbringing, his brother. There's just so, it really is almost like having a discussion on Jimmy is almost warranted of its own discussion rather than just a segment. But it's really hard for me to really pinpoint the moments that, because there's so many moments where Jimmy, I guess, evolves, devolves, changes, morphs in this show. Within seasons, there's multiple points where it's unclear where he's at. But I feel like Jimmy, in a lot of ways, really goes through so many painful experiences, and it's how he takes that pain and what he turns that pain into. And I think the most obvious example is the death of his brother. But even the death of, at the end of season 1, the death of his friend in Chicago, and how those sort of motivate his career choices, his motives, his methods. It's all just so complex and intricate. We should probably just talk about a few Jimmy things. So what would you say is the, I guess, one of the, and I know there's probably like literally dozens and dozens and dozens, but a important first character point that you really want to touch on Jimmy, whether it be like a transformation, a moment, or we could even just talk about like his role in season 1 or episode 1. Like, what do you think is a moment where Jimmy stands out and where you can sort of compare it to other points, if that makes any sense? I know this is a loaded question.
It's really tough because I feel like from my perspective, it's so gradual. I know a lot of people like saying, this is the moment that Jimmy becomes Saul, or this is the moment that Walt becomes Heisenberg.
Of course.
I think it's even more subtle than, more gradual than Walt's Breaking Bad. Walt was killing someone in the first episode, and I feel like with Jimmy, I was right off the gate much more sympathetic to Jimmy by landslide when it comes to motivations. But in any case, a few moments that stick out for me. Again, I think the moments I lean towards is not the actual moments of influence, but moments that show you what has influenced him. For example, there's a scene in the smack dab middle of season 4. Kim and Jimmy go into a restaurant, and Kim talks about that she's thinking about taking this offer as a partner, and Jimmy's thinking, oh, I gotta just use the restroom real fast, and he kind of has a little freak out, panic attack, when staring at the kitchen about because in his head he hadn't actually proposed it to her yet, but he was thinking, we got to get back to that office. That's his prerogative. Is everything's just got to go back to the way it was before I got disbarred. And he still says, yeah, you know what? I say go for it, because he doesn't want to show. That's a big part of his character, is not wanting to show vulnerability. He loves defense mechanisms. He loves projecting his own emotions onto other people and his own thoughts of himself. He totally has a complex in that regard. That's one of the. It's not a very big moment, but it's one of the things I think gives kind of a big insight. I mean, there's the big moments like obviously Chuck's rant at Jimmy, Chuck's death, a lot of things involving Chuck. Him not getting the job, Jimmy, in the 90s, not getting the job at HHM. That's a huge one. Yeah, Sorry, I could go on, but there's a tons.
Right. And Bob, I'll get to you really quick about Jimmy. Something that sort of I want to bring up that you inspired me from what you said is Jimmy has this attitude of he is the one always being kicked down. He's always the one that everyone else is kicking him while he's down. And in some ways, I think that attitude definitely is rooted in origins of his relationship with his brother. But I think a scene that really characterizes Jimmy as how he sees himself is I believe it's season 4. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And it's the scene when they are in the they're in the office. I forget where this is at. It might be HHN, but I don't know. No. I don't remember where it's at.
Describe it. I'll tell you where it is.
So it's a scene between him and a bunch of students. Oh, there are a bunch of students being selected.
Season 4, episode 10.
Yeah, it's HHN.
Season 4, episode 10. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and he has a discussion with this. Yeah, and that's what he has. The winner takes it all discussion with this girl, and it's that rant where he explores the ideas of everyone not believing in him and everyone kicking him while he's down and overcoming that and that sense of triumph by getting back and proving them wrong. And it's all about one person takes in the scoops everything in. One person is the winner. And for him, his whole ideology with being a lawyer, with being a person, is all about winning. It's all about being the winner. And that mentality is sort of the mentality that he slowly grows into throughout the show. And I think
he very much feels like he needs to do it himself too. Like he refuses to take any kind of handout or anything and any kind of help like that. He needs to build his own success. Basically, he has to become a winner on his own.
Right. And I think a lot of that is rooted from his brother. I think even not say more of it, but a lot of it that we don't see is really only see briefly is rooted in his father and how he viewed his father, his relationship. Seeing how other people, con his father, and those people were the winners because they got what they wanted from they got the prize, being money. In this case, the scene was when they're taking money from the store. So it's so interesting to see that mentality, but through a sympathetic lens, because I don't think the show really does this thing where it shows Jimmy and it makes the audience be like, see what Jimmy's doing, see the scumbag attitude that he has, see this con man that he is. It is much more rooted in empathy. It's much more rooted with in his emotions and his growth and his family and his relationships and his career, and it's much more personal. But it's still one that that ultimately it's cancerous. It's destructive, and it ultimately, as we'll talk to, possibly corrupts. But we'll talk about that. Another character. Anyway, Bob, I'll let you go because we've been talking a lot. What are there any scenes or moments or anything that you can say really is something that can define Jimmy, not in his entirety, but just in a way?
If there was one moment to point to, it would be where he ends up the whole scene before he ends up changing his name. Him not getting reinstated in the bar, and then him basically, because they knew he was not being genuine, and then him trying to ham it up to be more genuine. It's
the greatest con of all.
It pretty much is, yeah. He went in as genuine as he was, and they didn't think it was genuine, and he had to fake being actual genuine. And then it's more of him not being able to get his way and being kicked while he's down. Essentially, when he's honest, things don't work out for him. Is what he goes for. Is when he cons, that's when he's winning. Yeah,
being just genuine. The phrase or the word, I guess not phrase. The word genuine. Thank you. The word genuine is I would say it's a word that encapsulates a lot of the themes of this show. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
The him at the bar hearing, again, you can interpret it multiple ways. I do think he was genuinely being genuine in the way that he was answering, and they didn't believe him.
Right.
That's why he went off the one of my favorite scenes in the whole series. Kim and Jimmy right after that at the top of the parking garage having their big fight, which kind of encapsulates a lot of the season. Where again, Jimmy projects his perceived attitudes of other people towards him onto Kim. He's really, really internalized what Chuck's been drilling into him about not belonging. I love the fact that the dramatic irony that in order to actually appear genuine, he has to fake it. And it's also interesting because that's kind of the culmination of a lot of season four. The fact that he has kind of mentally blocked out Chuck. He wants to move forward. That's a big part of his character. He just needs to move forward. Looking back doesn't do anything for him. He needs to but unfortunately his past is so integral to the internals of his thought process and his character. Not being able to analyze that and accept it and not going to therapy and thinking about it, not doing the hard work of grief and trying to take a shortcut, right? Because that's his whole thing. Seeing his whole character is seeing the shortest path between 2 points, no matter what that is.
And a good character comparison, and we'll get to this character later, who we'll just touch on briefly, is seeing the grief process of Jimmy versus Howard. And like how you said, seeing how Jimmy, ultimately attempts to take shortcuts in that, while Howard goes through the brutal, painful, and at least like on the much more on the surface, grief that he goes through, and seeing how Jimmy, comments on that and points out to Howard and the conversations they have, really shows the different sort of ways they are going through grieving. And you're right, how Jimmy is literally, trying to take the shortcut, trying to I don't know if this is the right way of saying it, but be the winner in moving on, being the winner of grieving, moving on, and going forward. But as I guess we can even talk about now before we get to Chuck and his, because we'll definitely talk about his legacy and after his death, the effect he has in the show, because he definitely still does, not just in flashback scenes, but in other ways. Jimmy just still to this point, his lack of proper grieving and hang-ups that he has with Chuck is still so apparent in his character, still where the show's at right now. It's so integral. I think really there is not to say that Jimmy's character, like I said, there's not one point where Jimmy's character changes, but there's definitely moments where you can see it shift a lot more than others and see it just slowly move. Like, oh, I saw that movement. And another one is Chuck's death, obviously. I think pre-Chuck's death, Jimmy's character goes through, or they almost like goes through this wild change that takes, I really think, really a whole season. That is being season 4, and by the end of that, which season 4 it takes place over the longest span of time, right? Isn't that like a year and a half, right?
Yeah, it's a year and a half, or a year. Sorry, a year and a month. That's what it is.
A year and a month.
Because there's the something stupid montage at the beginning of episode 7 spans 9 months. That's a 9 month.
Spans 9 months.
Yep, because the construction also skips over that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that was not to say that was a writing convenience, but they kind of had to do that to progress the story.
Oh yeah.
But also worked. And now that you mention it, I do remember watching the episode, and the episode does kind of like really like blatantly point out like, 9 months has passed, or at least that long span of time. But I kind of just forgot. Oh god, that montage is so good. Oh my god,
I love the callback to it too in season 5.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Oh man. Okay.
Real fast, I just wanted to mention something before we move on. The Howard and Jimmy scene when Howard's kind of all disheveled in the bathroom in the middle of season 4.
Yeah.
And it's right after their conversation. Jimmy rips up the therapist phone number and puts it in the toilet.
Right.
Howard's constantly looking at himself in the mirror in that scene. Jimmy never looks at his reflection. He's not facing himself, right? Like Howard is.
Right.
Just that was a cool little detail.
Right. That's so good. Oh my god, that's so good.
Mm-hmm. I love I'm full of tiny little details like that. So been really, I feel like usually when I'm really into something, I I try to get as much depth as I get into it, and then I move on to the next thing. I've been stuck on this show forever. It feels like. I feel
Well,
like
hasn't ended yet. That's why.
yeah.
All right. We'll get to more Jimmy. Don't worry. Because it's really hard to just encapsulate Jimmy in one topic. But I just want to get an idea of how we feel about Jimmy's character. Is there anything else you really want to add before we move on to the next character? Again, we missed. I know we covered maybe like 10% of what we could cover, but there's just we it's a whole discussion within itself.
I guess I would just say a couple things. If anyone is confused about maybe, because I think this is one of the more open-ended questions about Jimmy's actions towards Howard in season 5, his speech that he gives to the student about
I think
making them suffer and
right.
all that stuff. I think that answers a lot. Second thing, real fast,
And
is I feel
get
like
to Howard too. By the way, we'll get to
yeah,
Howard.
for sure.
So we'll talk about those scenes.
A lot of Jimmy's, I feel like his, always being down. A lot of it is circumstantial towards him. I think a lot of it is self-imposed though, in the ways that he does have outs at many points during the series. He had a great job at beginning of season 2, and same with. Oh yeah, well yeah, I have a whole thing about him refusing the job.
Right, he had a great job at in season 2, but that cup just didn't fit in the cup holder.
I love that one.
Fit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, and it didn't fit, and that's sort of Jimmy. Is he's this cup that just doesn't quite fit in that cup holder. And then I guess really like Jimmy then, instead of analyzing the cup, blames the cup holder in its entirety.
Yep.
And you can see where he's coming from at some points. But then you realize, like, Jimmy, you're a cup. Yeah. You can change shape. I know cups can't, but in this circumstance, whatever.
Yes.
I know I'm like cartoonishly describing the themes of that scene, but you understand my point.
That's why in season 4, Kimmy and Jim's relationship was so strained, because Kim was at her highest. It's about class, right? Jimmy's at his lowest class-wise. There's a lot of references to Jimmy going up to Kim's level or Kim going down to Jimmy's level.
It's all levels.
Yeah, about the speech the embarrassing speech he gives in front of not Schweikart, her partner, about taking everyone on taking all of his employees.
Oh, on the trip.
He constantly refers to the altitude and the highness and the kind of the grandeur. And he's escalating it because he feels so out of place in that party. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's the thing about Jimmy though. That's the thing about Jimmy is his cup may not fit in the cup holder, but he'll make it fit, and that is Jimmy's whole character. I mean, not his whole character. To describe it, not his whole character in one statement, but that's a big part of his character. Yeah. Is going through that, and yeah. Oh man. All right. Bob, anything else you want to add to Jimmy before we move on?
Anything else I want to add to Jimmy is relevant to other characters, so I'll wait until we get
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to we'll talk about Jimmy in relation to Saul Goodman and that whole transformation, which is, I know, the show, but a little more specific. We'll talk about that later on. All right, I'm gonna move on to the next character, and again, I'm kind of going here what I think, and you guys may disagree with this statement just from the character that's next, but going from the most nuanced and in-depth characters, and you may be shocked to see who I have next. I don't have who you think. We're talking about Kim. I know maybe you might be like, Mike? Where's Mike? Forget the Mike.
No, I figured you'd talk about Kim.
Yeah.
All right, let's.
I agree.
This is a personal thing. This is a personal statement, and it's probably why this is my favorite section. Kim is my favorite character in this show, personally. I think Jimmy has the most to him. He's the most to explore, but Kim is my personal favorite. I think her arcs and her motivations and her evolution is just so fucking good. Oh my god. All right, let's talk about Kim. I think Kim is the character that's definitely most, well, not that she should stand on her own, because she does have her own scenes, but her character in relation to Jimmy is, I think, the most interesting part of her. Not to say that she doesn't obviously stand on her own. I think she has some really great scenes in season 1 and 2, and actually all the seasons when I think about it. But I think Kim has this very standard foil attitude to Jimmy. Jimmy's always willing to take shortcuts, willing to do the very, very scummy schemes. I know it's alliteration for you. Scummy schemes that he has on downright illegal schemes later on and at many points in the show. And Kim is all about following the book, doing what's right, following every path that needs to be followed, every check mark that needs to be checked. Except there are moments where she takes a break from that and indulges in Jimmy's life, and we kind of see that gradually happen. There's a point, I think it's the first episode in season 2, where they scam the man with the drinks. They get a bunch of drinks out of him. I think it's season 2, episode 1, or maybe episode 2. It's around.
So when they start their relationship within the show, it's implied they might have had a thing previously, but it's when they started within the show.
They really start. Yeah. And that's why I really think her character picks up. Not that she doesn't have a solid character in season 1, she does, but it really, I think, picks up after that, and we see more of those scams happen, and we see that they use it in like the courtroom or in methods like you mentioned with season 5 with the conflict between Jimmy and Kim, with the man who doesn't want to take the deal. We also see her orchestrate the plan herself with getting Huel off in season 4 as well.
There's also the one in season 4 about her going to the place in Texas where they were going to build a new bank and getting her and Jimmy getting the thing changed.
The blueprints.
Yeah, the blueprints.
Was that season 4 or that 5?
That was season 4.
Yeah.
That was season 4. Okay, that scene was so good. Oh my god, I forgot about that one.
Season 4, episode 9. It's when the milk's spilling on the blueprint.
So good.
Yeah.
But then we see, I think, a shift in Kim. That obviously, just like Jimmy, doesn't happen at one point. It's very gradual. And it's definitely symbolized by that item that she keeps on her it's from the drink cap, right? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
From the season 2.
Yeah, it's also in Breaking Bad. It's the So okay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, interesting. So it's the blue drink that I'll send it to you real fast, an image of it. It's a blue. It's exactly the same as Dawn, or I don't remember names. Gus poisons everyone. End of season 4, Breaking Bad. With that drink, it's the same exact container and drink that is
God, you're right.
drunk by Kim and Jimmy. The first time it shows up in Better Call Saul is season 2, episode 1, and they keep the cap, and that's the same cap that is.
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of stayed. It's kind of symbolized that side of their relationship. Giselle and whatever name he uses side.
Yes. Oh man. But then we sort of see throughout the show, there are moments. It's not super linear. It's not like she's like slowly like, yeah, let's do more and more of this. There are moments where she's in it. There are moments where she pushes back, and it definitely depends on where her character is in relation to the show, because she definitely is a character that shifts and changes a lot, and kind of like ebb and flow sort of style to her. But it really is at the end of season 5 where, and really with the last episode, but more so the previous episodes too, but really last episode, where it feels like just something clicks, and it sort of almost flips on its head, where she's now introducing ideas with Jimmy. She's now being the motivator to continue these sort of like, schemes, to the point where you almost see horror on Jimmy's face, where he realizes, just like Mike said to him, like, oh, she's in the game now. From his perspective means, you got involved with the cartel. They're aware of her. Oh, she's involved now. But it's almost like the sort of thesis of like, oh, Kim is now part of the game that Jimmy's been playing. Except now, obviously, that game is of a much higher scale and degree. It started off with, trying to get people off, in trial, or doing these little schemes to get drinks, or to do other small things, lift their status, and now it's involves the cartel, which is obviously of a much larger proportion. But all right, I've talked too long. What are some of your favorite Kim moments? What are some Kim moments that stand out to you, or generally, how do you feel about her character?
Well, it's definitely the end of season 5 is, I think, the biggest character moment I genuinely have the least insight into, because I think that they're going to answer more of my questions in season 6, because I'm not quite sure where that turn comes from. It feels a bit sudden, but it also kind of makes sense. But also, I think they're going to answer more of questions. What big part of this show for me is figuring out why characters are acting the way they are. That's one of my favorite parts of dissecting this show.
It's a puzzle piece.
And one of the big ones for me is in season 5, getting married. Well, what? That doesn't make sense. I think from Kim's perspective, it makes so much sense. Her problem with Jimmy at that point is not the fact that he's conning, but the fact that he's conning her. The best solution to that, and Jimmy's excuse for that, is to protect her. If they get married, that excuse is gone. So there's no reason for him to do that anymore. Everything's back the way it is. I heard a quote, they got an office for love and a marriage for logic
Business.
or something like that. Business, yeah. It is a hypocritical part of her character that while she does do the scams for good reasons, or at least in her eyes, it's still scamming, right? And it's when it's turned on her at the end of season 4 and at the Wexler versus Kim episode. That's when she gets really uncomfortable with it. And so that's why getting married is the perfect solution. Except Mike is also right in the fact that you can't let anyone you let know about these illegal activities, you're getting too involved. So, hey, I found the perfect solution. You can tell me everything now. That has the intended consequence of bringing her into the game. So it's both Mike and Kim are both right in terms of, well, honesty is important in a relationship, but Mike's right. Mike doesn't let anyone of his family know, what's going on. Because, yeah. And so it's the interesting, Jimmy goes back and forth latter half of season 5, telling Kim or not telling Kim, kind of the tug of war between those two reasonings.
Yeah, definitely. I think really the her getting married to Jimmy can be viewed as a means to an end, and I think that's what she says it is. And I think that's what it definitely is in a lot of ways. But there's also so much nuance to it. It's so interesting to look at it and see how much of it is really authentic. Wait, isn't that the word we brought up earlier? Authentic? Wait,
genuine. Yeah.
Genuine. Yeah, if it's genuine. Because they definitely have genuine feelings for each other.
Right.
But that move of getting married feels like the least genuine move. At least that's how it's implied to be. But there definitely feels like there's some genuine.
No, yeah, they absolutely
feelings.
Yeah, have full love for each other. They would do anything for the other person, as been seen in the show with many of the things that they've done. One of my favorite Kim moments was absolutely in season 5, episode 9, when Lalo comes to the apartment and she basically screams him down. That is the most badass thing that could have ever happened. And it really shows how much she's evolved from the beginning of the show, being so straight laced and a partner at
because
HHM and everything.
She knows the truth.
Right.
She knows she knows something happened there. It's not until the next episode she really learns.
Right.
But at that point, she knows, but Jimmy doesn't know that she knows. But she's willing to do the Jimmy thing, where it's to win, to con a sucker, to show that she can win this sparring game, despite her now knowing she's lying, she's taking corners. I know it's not in a court of law, but it definitely is is rhyming there. But in that scene, and I guess we'll get to Lalo a little bit later. We won't talk super a lot about him, but that scene, I think Lalo knows, but it's the way Kim spins everything that's going on in Lalo's life and read him perfectly and just paint a picture for him where he just can't verbally stand up against it. There's nothing he can say. Yeah. And it's that sort of beauty of the art of, I guess, verbal sparring. It's not debating. Lawyering, I guess. Yeah.
And for her to take over the room with as charismatic as a character as Lalo is, to just basically shut him down is just incredible.
Yeah, I feel like Kim in general gets the most. Not the. I say the most implies she doesn't get it in other seasons, but I feel like her biggest growth or biggest noticeable change in in-depth analysis is the latest season. It's season 5. I would argue.
Yeah, it's interesting about that particular scene you brought up with Lalo, because I view it less as scamming and more of a survival instinct. It's not necessarily in the same vein of tricking. Literally, here's what I think spurs the moment. Kim keeps looking back into their bedroom where the bag is of money. Right before Kim stands up and says, "Are you kidding me with this?" Jimmy says, "I'll give back the money." Kim knows that if Jimmy grabs that bag in that moment, Lalo will see the cup with the bullet hole through it. And I think that's why she does that, is because
Ah, didn't
it's
think about
not
that.
yeah, it's because that second world's greatest lawyer cup
Ah,
is
yeah.
still in there. And the story about kids taking pot shots at the car, which makes everything she says is very plausible. I think actually Lala might buy it a bit in terms of plausibility. It is very irresponsible for Lalo to have asked Jimmy to do this
Mhm.
because it feels
Yeah.
like if they're a big powerful cartel, why trust,
Yeah, you don't have
this
anyone you
guy
can
to do it? He
trust.
obviously doesn't have his stuff under control. It is doesn't make sense to have Jimmy go get it, but it is Lalo's only option at that point. That was the play. Jimmy was out of
Yeah.
in that scene. Jimmy could not handle. He was having a breakdown. He was
Yeah,
about.
he was
It seemed like he was about to tell her.
emotionally scarred. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly right.
obviously. Yeah, that's actually a really good point of her using it as a survival method. And I think it's that moment where she, quote unquote, like I'm going to say beats him, for lack of a better phrase, that really sparks her actions in the next episode. I think it almost gives her this thrill, this ride that Jimmy sort of has got from, not doing this in this situation, but, like scamming other people and winning in this like sort of like verbal sparring match. I think that gives her this big rush, and I think that's the big motivation one of the big motivations in the next episode, where some of it seems like, why would she want to do this with the Howard? Like, why is she coming up with all these schemes? I think that might be a consequence of what happened in the previous episode. Although that's just speculation. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I think delving into my best theory I could come up with. Howard, he correctly assumes in a way, but he does assume that Kim quit her job because of something Jimmy did. And I do think that was a big misstep on his part. He's trying to legitimately warn her
Yeah,
about that
and
Jimmy's acting
he says
rash and all this
Jimmy
stuff.
needs help,
Yeah,
and that's probably the most correct statement in the whole show.
yeah.
Yes. Jimmy
I
needs help. Yes.
Oh, but the the way that he does do a lot of assuming as to that's why Kim's doing this thing. And I think rightly so, Kim feels a bit insulted by that
Yeah,
because
she her agency is in question. Yeah,
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Not everything she's doing. In fact, she took the job against what Jimmy really wanted, and she quit the job against what Jimmy really wanted. Jimmy was arguing against that, and I think I think s- again, this is the hardest. I feel like I have an answer for everything else, but this is the hardest character motivation for me because this is the very last thing that's happened, right? Um, I think that part of it is spurred on by her justifying Jimmy's actions, right? Because I think I think she is surprised by hearing that Jimmy's done this. But she's been with Jimmy through all of that, um, a bit through all of the him getting his law license and getting it rejected, and she trying to kind of come up with a mental excuse of why Jimmy would do this and going along with it further. It's not all the way there for me. I feel like we need more information. For me
yeah.
at least.
It's tough because we're talking about a show that's not complete yet.
Yeah,
That's why
it
it's
Right.
so
feels
difficult.
it
But
feels like it feels maybe again. People I think criticize this particular moment. Kind of some people I've seen of like it feels like a bit too sudden of a change, but I really do think that there is
We just don't know
justification for
enough
it.
yet.
I
We just don't know
honestly
enough yet.
think
Exactly.
there are things that can point to it, and I think a lot of that is shown in season 5. But you're right; it's
Mhm.
not complete. And the show, a lot of the time, is about diving in why characters do things.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of questions like, why would this character do this thing?
Yeah.
And it's actually really mostly with Jimmy and now Kim. Um, but yeah, we'll have to see. It's hard to talk about that.
It's like I by the way, I don't agree with that criticism. I hope that didn't come across.
No, 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 and that's okay if you do.
But
I was, yeah,
yeah, no, I was gonna say is it's the same exact. People had some, and I think rightly so in the moment, criticisms of Breaking Bad season 4, episode 12, Jesse and Walt's confrontation about Brock. Like, why did you poison him? And Walt spins the tale of Gus poisoning Brock. It doesn't really make sense why Gus would poison Brock. It's a bit too far out there logically. But it makes sense in the moment because Walt sells it. And people criticize, well,
Right.
actually, people, when that episode came out, I was reading comments of that time before the final episode came out, and people were saying, well, I mean, it doesn't really make sense that Gus would do that, and it doesn't, and that was
Yeah.
proved in the next episode.
Right.
And I
Yes.
think that this is a kind of a similar situation.
Yeah.
Again, I've only seen like a few people say that, but yeah, I'm very excited to see
Where that
how they
goes.
explore that more. In
I think
next
Kim
season.
is probably the character I look forward the most to seeing how her arc completes.
Yes, absolutely.
Obviously,
Yeah.
as we'll talk about in our predictions, from the fact that she's not in Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad, yes.
Yeah.
We'll get to Kim later. All these characters are so intertwined with each other that, you know, as we'll see, the further we move on, the further these characters are entangled. And that brings us to our next character. It's Mike. We're talking about Mike. Hey, get him out of here. Mike, it's Mike time. So, all right. I, going into this show, knew that the show is called Better Call Saul. So, I guess any logical person who, you know, could read would say it's just probably about Saul. Jimmy. Saul, yeah. And I knew Mike was in this show. I did not realize that Mike was so integral to this show. That his growth and change, just like Jimmy's, which I expected, would be showcased here. I did not expect that. And it's easily one of my biggest surprises. Because I think Mike goes through quite the arc. And I don't think it's as in-depth as Jimmy, because he just by nature has just less screen time. But there's so much here with Mike. Oh my god, this is like every character. There's gonna be like one or two characters come out. Like I don't know where to start. I don't know where to fucking start with Mike. Although, you know, actually maybe I do. I really enjoy at the beginning of the show how they tell the story of his son and the death of his son. I think the first season does an excellent job, and specifically one scene really capturing the emotional impact that had on Mike. And it's the first time we really see, because of how he is by Breaking Bad, we see a real emotional side from Mike. And that's when his breakdown when discussing his son to his what would be, what's his relation to her?
Stepdaughter. Well, it's his son's son's
wife. So that would be daughter-in-law?
Correct.
Daughter-in-law. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, daughter-in-law. That scene is still one of my favorite scenes of the whole show. I believe it's like episode 8 or 7 or something of the first
It's 6.
season.
He was nominated for an Emmy for that one.
He knows everything.
I think about the show a bit.
No, it's good. It's good. No. It's that. It is an accomplishment. You're like the encyclopedia here.
Yeah, it's just fun facts coming to my head. Like Jonathan Banks was nominated for an Emmy, but he didn't win. Peter Dinklage won, and Peter Dinklage gave a shout out to Jonathan Banks specifically in his Emmy speech. I think everyone was expecting Jonathan Banks to win that one.
What scene did Peter Dinklage win for? Do you know?
I don't know anything about Game of Thrones.
It'll be a certain episode of Game of Thrones. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
because you get nominated for episodes for that kind of stuff. Like you get I think you get like 2 episodes that are put up for each season of a show.
Yeah. Well, Better Call Saul has been constantly snubbed Emmy-wise. It doesn't really matter, but
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Regardless of that, no, it's a good point to bring up though. Regardless of that, Mike is spectacular. I love.
I mean, if it's season 4, it makes sense. But hold on.
Regardless, let's not dwell on it too much. You can look it up, and maybe we'll talk about it later. But I do want to talk about Mike's sort of character evolution here, because, like we mentioned earlier, seeing where he is at the beginning of the show is shocking and jarring, because you're like, wait, why is he working as a parking like booth worker? Like what is this? It creates for a lot of comedic scenes, and I love it. But it is sort of like, how does he get where he gets? And that journey is just so fascinating. But it's not just where he gets where he gets, it's where his character gets where he gets. And that's just simply the fact that Mike in Better Call Saul in the beginning is not this brutal killer. He's not someone who just kills because it's his job and he needs to do what he needs to do. Now, he does have that same mentality of like, being very honorable towards like getting a job done or a task done. We see that in season 1 where he's working for the character who is selling pills. I think he's selling it to Nacho.
Christ,
He's
yeah.
driving that yellow car. That isn't until season 2, I think. But him doing that job is how serious and honorable it is, or how much dedication he puts in that work is something we definitely see in Breaking Bad. So we see the roots of that. But when he's so distraught about killing the cops who killed his son, you're kind of like, like that's what he does. Like that sounds like a Mike thing to do. It isn't until we discover the effects that he has, and where I think the change comes is at the end of season 4, where he's forced to kill. I do not remember the character's name. I'm so bad with characters.
Werner Ziegler.
Yes.
Ziegler, yes.
And I think that's a very defining moment for his character, and launches him to where he ends up in Breaking Bad. Because in Breaking Bad, we just casually see him kill quite a few people. It's his job. But in that is a line he is much more hesitant in early points of the show, just blatantly unwavering, will not
refuses,
cross that line.
yeah.
Refuses, thank you. I couldn't think of the verb. Refuses to cross that line. So I think that his whole arc in discovering that is so interesting. And of course, discovering how dedicated he is, whether it be like how he is employed by Lydia to mask the work he's doing for Gus. And he literally, what's his like job title? Like
Security consultant or something
security
like
consultant, and then he goes to the length of to steal someone's badge just to prove a point and that he could do the job and that the job need to be done. It's like, you don't need to do this job,
Right.
Mike. He's doing it anyway.
He doesn't like to get the money for nothing.
Exactly.
Yes, and he almost says like, "Oh no, it's a." He says like to I think either Lydia or Gus that no, he's doing it to make sure the act falls through and there's a reason for it. But I think he just wants to feel like he's earning it. He wants to feel like he's not just sitting around, because they're at that point in the show. Gus is just like, just wait. You can just wait for your next job and just sit around. And that's Mike cannot do that. He's physically unaware of doing that. But I know I just touched about little scenes and moments of Mike. But what do you guys think? What's some of your favorite Mike scenes, or some stuff that really sticks out with Mike as a character? Because he's a really good character in Breaking Bad, and I think he's a fan favorite in a lot of ways, but he is not. It isn't until this show where we really explore the depth of his character. So, what are some of you guys' favorite?
Yeah, I would say, season 5 of Breaking Bad really explores Mike, at least the first half.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm not saying the show does it at all, but this show has a whole show to do it.
For sure. Couple things. I don't think Mike was distraught about actually killing the cops. I think he stands by that decision. I think he was distraught about just when he was telling the story to his daughter-in-law, he was distraught more about the
recounting the stuff that happened to his son. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah. It's hard to, because they do describe a whole scope of stuff before the show. I think it's important to remember that Mike is not the best guy, even though before Better Call Saul, he was a corrupt cop. He told a story in Breaking Bad where he brought guy into a desert and put a gun in his mouth and said, "Hey, if you ever hit your girlfriend, wife again, I'm gonna, such and such," and that didn't end up doing anything. So he's obviously, but he's not.
But
he's not a murderer.
The show acknowledges that,
Yes.
But he's so proud and defensive, and that's the reason why his his son died. He is so hell-bent on defending the honor and legacy of his son, because he obviously feels bad for what he did, and the last thing he wants is to anyone think of his son like that, of how he was.
Because his son wasn't like that. His son, unfortunately, the thing that got his son killed was the son ended up doing the wrong thing, but it didn't matter at that point. And so the whole, I think the irony is that and the whole, I think the powerfulness of the whole speech comes from this, is that Mike made Maddie, in Mike's opinion, a lesser person. He made him like Mike, and he there's so many quotes in that speech, like he fought kicking and screaming against what Mike was saying, but at the end he caved because it was Mike. He wouldn't have corrupted for anyone else except for Mike. Mike broke his boy, that whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's
Oh,
the
that
yeah. It's
delivery.
it's it's such
Oh,
a
when you said
bad.
he broke his boy, like I just
Oh,
heard
yeah.
the crumbling of Mike's voice as he delivered that
Oh,
line, and that's
it's
just
the most
so.
emotional Mike's ever been. It's an
It
insanely good.
is one of the most
Anything from
emotional
that
scenes in the
freaking
whole
yeah
show. Still,
yeah
it's
yeah.
still one of my favorites to this day. But like you mentioned earlier, yeah, like his willingness not to fight back or resort to I guess not necessarily violence, but to straight up murder. We see that in the Tuco scene, and another scene we see it in is a lot through season 5 because it feels like season 5 is Mike's low point. It's obviously after what happened with in season 4,
Mhm.
and I think we see it when he is willing to go into the street and fight these, like, I guess just people who are just like living. I don't really know. It's actually a scene that when I first watched it, I was like, feels a little, I don't know. It was weird for me. Like, he's walking down the street and these guys just call him out, and then he just defeats all of them, and like you don't see him talking about right in this fight.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like, like, what purpose did that serve when the scene first happened? I'm like, I don't know, like that just felt like a little bit like, all right, like a little bit too much for me. But then we see him return to that exact spot, and that's when I was like, oh, like he wants this to happen.
Mhm.
Like he wants to unleash that rage, and unleash his anger, and that's when we really start to see him use violence as a way to cope, I think, or a
Yeah.
way to grief. And that's when it kind of, I think, starts to turn. I think we're going to see it in season 6 as well. But yet we still see, and not to say we don't see a spot in Breaking Bad, but we see him still fighting, like, for people that, like, just really does not benefit fighting for, whether that be when he was fighting for, Ziegler, is his name, in season 4. And then we see him now in season 5 fighting for Nacho.
Right.
So he definitely still has that honorable
Mhm.
element to him. Yeah, it feels like, I think this show, Mike in the show really, he does a lot, but now looking back on Breaking Bad, you just really see just how broken he is as a character.
Yeah.
Because like when you watch Breaking Bad, that his sort of like lack of emotional response, these crazy things happen, is kind of like cool. It's like, oh, Mike's so cool. Like Mike's just such a cool guy. But then you almost now it has much more of a sadder undertone to it.
Right.
Like he just feels way more broken under Gus. Way
Yeah,
more
Mike's whole
just
arc in
yeah.
season 4 was my one of my favorite parts of the whole show so far. Like with the construction of the underground lab, and his involvement with that, and everything that happened with Ziegler. Like he fought so hard to keep Ziegler alive and to not, because he knew that this is stuff that like a normal person would do, and he was just broken when he knew at the end that he had to kill him, otherwise stuff would happen to his granddaughter and everything, and he had to do what he had to do, and that really really hurt him. And as you can see in season 5, that's what's going on.
Yeah, I think
Right.
the ultimate reason why he did kill Ziegler is because he knew if he didn't do it, someone else was going to.
Yes.
Right.
So at that point, he had considered Ziegler a friend. If anyone was going to do it, he was
He
going
had
to
to
do it.
take. It felt like he was taking responsibility almost. Like he had to take responsibility for the actions that
Yeah.
occurred, and that was his way of. It almost yeah. That's pretty much everything. I don't know what I was gonna say, and no, that's all I have to say. But I will say I think that execution scene is it's Mike really. It's the point where Mike, his morals and I know again we talked about his crookedness, not to say that he's a perfect character, but he still has very strong morals against straight up violence. You don't want to see him killing somebody. He doesn't want to do it, and that conflicting with his attitude of being so dedicated to his job, and those two conflicting. And obviously it's a very interesting thing because you can't really work for someone like Gus and be honorable at the same time. It's impossible. And we see parts of that in Breaking Bad, but it's really that moment where you realize like he cannot do both. He has to choose. Does he want to live on this legacy of regretting what he did in his crooked days as a cop, or does he want to work for his family and provide for them, and also be very dedicated to this job? Like he can't pick both. He has to choose one. and he does choose one. And
Yeah.
it is being to Gus.
I've definitely spent a lot of time thinking about Mike's switch of character in the middle of season 5. Oh wait, first of all, the Werner Ziegler scene has a lot of parallels to the end of season 3 of Breaking Bad, when he's leading Walt into the laundromat and is going to kill him in the lab. The way that Walt begs for his life is very similar to the way Werner Ziegler begs for his life. They both first say, "You don't need to pay me money." Then they say, that they'll work for free, and they say, "If I could just talk to Gus, I can explain everything." It's almost exact, right? And it's really interesting seeing the way that Mike responds in both of those cases. If you
Very
in
different.
Breaking Bad, Mike doesn't look excited about what he's doing. He says, "I'm sorry, I have to do this." In
And that's
Breaking
like
Bad.
the part, not to interrupt you, but that's the part where it feels like he's so broken. That contrasting nature. Because when I first watched the show, I'm just like, oh, like he's just kind of a badass. Like it's just like, whatever, this is my job. I gotta do what I gotta do. But then it feels like now, looking on that scene with a retrospective, I guess, like lens, it's way more sadder.
Yeah, I definitely think that Mike at the beginning of season 5, he's looking for purpose. He really doesn't like himself. And he really doesn't like Gus either. He doesn't agree with what Gus is doing. He's kind of coming to terms with, okay, what's the point of any of this, right? I'm working for a drug lord. I'm providing money for my family, but really, like, what's the purpose of any of this? And I think what Gus has a talent of getting to people. His speech to Walt about family and providing for your family as a man really taps into what Walt's all about. And then also his speech about revenge in season 5, episode 5 of Better Call Saul is really what gets Mike back on board, because Gus tells Mike what this whole thing is. It's for revenge. Gus could just live off of the revenue from his restaurants. That's absolutely possible, but he doesn't. Partly probably of ego or hubris, but I think mainly because
we'll talk a little bit about Gus.
Yeah. But he's mainly for the revenge plot. But it ties in so much with Mike's character is because Mike also really understands that need for revenge with his son. And I think that's why it's important that he does agree with what he did to those cops, because it gives him, he's back on board with Gus in the latter half of season 5. And I think that's why, is because he understands that Gus now, has it's not just all mindless, it's violence. It has a purpose of what Gus's overarching plan is. I think it doesn't show him telling, but he does say revenge, and it says Dedicato Emax or something like that, which was the guy who got shot. Probably Gus's lover.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, we'll talk about that. We got the Gus.
Yeah. Sorry, I got too much into Gus, but it's
Well,
interconnected with Mike.
their characters are so intertwined. That's the great thing about these shows, is characters. They just show about characters' arcs and stories being so intertwined. Is there anything else you guys, maybe Bob, anything else you want to touch upon with Mike before we move on?
I think we hit on basically his whole arc and character development.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's awesome. I love how they handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I will say, there's a couple moments in Breaking Bad that now stand out. It's Walt trying to convince Mike to turn against Gus is much funnier now. It just is so pathetic. I remember originally watching Breaking Bad, and because Mike legitimately was shaken by Gus slitting open Victor's neck, because he's been with Victor since like 2003, right, working with him.
Right, he's in Better Call Saul, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you watch that scene, Mike pulls a gun on Gus in that scene.
Right.
And he looks so frightened. And later he's picking up, he's in the bar that he likes to hang out in, and he's picking off like blood off of his fingernail, and it clues in the audience, okay, well maybe he's having second thoughts, and then it shows the Walt scene. So when you're originally watching Breaking Bad, you're like, well maybe, but no, knowing everything that we know now, there's no way.
Right.
And also, Mike's reaction to Gus being killed. Like, do you even know what you've done? Like, he's so angry at Walt. It's not. I mean, it's partly because of Gus, but it's partly because of the money. The money for his granddaughter's all gone. It's Hank took it all.
And this is, and I'm saying this, I know this is something that is said about Breaking Bad, but it definitely translates to Better Call Saul. and it's definitely because in Breaking Bad, Mike definitely foils in a lot of ways Walt, in that he sort of feels like he has, and we know we've talked about this in the Breaking Bad discussion. Go watch that, of Walt's motivations for his family being, in the end of the day, bullshit. He cared way more about cooking meth, but Mike sort of feels like a version of Walt that genuinely does care about his family and doesn't have that ego. And instead of trying to overtake Gus and build an empire, is subservient to him and does what he needs to do to provide for his family. He feels like that version of Walt, which is why they clash in season 5 so much. And that sort of carries over here with the moments you're talking about. Like, it feels like he's almost at like that point where he's unlike what Walt says, he's doing what he's doing for his family. We got to talk about the big boy. We got another big boy to talk about.
But by the way, hold on. By the way, that was Peter Dinklage won for Hard Home.
Okay.
That year, and then Jonathan Banks was nominated for that episode 5-0.
Yeah, Jonathan Banks should have won that.
Yeah.
There's only one scene in Game of Thrones that I could say Peter Dinklage it would be close, and that'd be in season 4.
Yeah, season 4 finale. I would say, yeah.
Yeah. Regardless of that,
and you know who won that year? Aaron Paul for Jesse.
But there you go. That's the payback.
Yep.
They're all about
for the previous year. Yeah.
Yeah, for the previous year.
Year. Yeah.
I was like, how could he have? Anyway.
Yeah. Aaron Paul won the previous year. Yeah.
I didn't realize Better Call Saul came out so quickly after Breaking Bad ended.
Yeah, Breaking Bad ended end of 2000.
I think it was beginning of 2014. I want to say.
That it ended. That's right. It ran into 2014.
Yeah.
Better Call Saul started
a year later.
Yeah, 2015. Yeah.
I mean, why wait, right?
I guess I thought there was a couple of years gap. I'm surprised. Anyway, regardless of that, we got to talk about another big character. Although this one, in terms of screen time and episode count, has way less than any we've talked about, and that's no other than old Chuck.
Chucky.
Talk about Chuck. Chuck is, I think, a character that. All right, I'm gonna say this statement, and it's a statement that is a good analogy, but is not a comparison between characters. Are you ready for this? This is a statement, and when I hear this, you're gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna stop watching this fucking video. This guy's an idiot. For me, Chuck is the Skylar of Better Call Saul.
I've heard that.
In that, not that they are similar, but in that I feel like a lot of characters watch this show and go, oh my god, fuck Chuck. Like, he's so mean. He's such a bad person. And no, he's not perfect. He has a lot of flaws. But I feel like Chuck he does a lot of things that are very selfish. He does a lot of things that definitely damage not only his relationship, obviously, with Saul, or Jimmy, but really, I think, damages Jimmy and really puts him on a path. I think in a lot of ways, you could argue Chuck helps create Saul, or at least is a big factor in pushing Jimmy towards Saul. Absolutely. Even though in his mind he wants to do quite the opposite. Simultaneously, though, Chuck says a lot of stuff about Jimmy that could not be right. I mean, could not be more right, rather. Mm-hmm. Like, it is so correct. And he says stuff, and you're like, oh, he's right. But then you start to question, is he right because... Is it like an irony sort of thing where he's right because he's also sort of making it become right? We could talk about that. There's also like
almost like not allowing Jimmy to prove him wrong, basically.
Yeah. All that with an underline, or I say all that with underline, it really is like overshadowing, but delving into like mental illnesses and stuff. It's a lot. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
I feel like we're gonna get. Well, you know what? How about this? I'll say the thing we'll talk about last, and that is not his death scene, which is the last time it happens, of course. But we'll talk about that you know the scene I'm talking about, the in the courtroom with the phone battery.
Chicanery.
We'll talk about that scene. We'll save that for last. Let's talk about everything but that for now. What do you guys think about like Chuck as a character, and what do you think the show did? How did they do well handling him, you think?
I think he's kind of the perfect foil for Jimmy early on, because he's somebody who's close to him and somebody who Jimmy wants to basically impress. Basically, he wants to be there for his brother. And that's basically the whole driving factor, is to he wants to prove his brother wrong, basically, and but also to just be successful and like be there as a family member.
Yeah, I think the whole proving him wrong thing though isn't really. I think it starts off with him wanting to live up to his legacy and show him that he can do what he does. But then it is when, which is a great reveal, by the way, is a reveal that he is the one that prevented him from ever joining the law firm. Because the show really paints Howard to be that, and I think they do a good job with Howard because his appearance and his status is automatically, they kind of look at him and you kind of just want to punch him in the face when you see him. Like he just kind of has that look to him, and the show I think does a really good job like building up this almost stereotypical like, oh, this lawyer you just want to punch in the face, but I think it actually is a very genuinely really well built up and good like pulling of the carpet when you realize that it's not Howard that prevented Jimmy from working at his firm. It's Chuck. But then you realize, shit, that also makes way more sense.
Yes.
How did I see this coming?
Fun fact about the behind the scenes, they did not have that twist when they started filming Better Call Saul season 1, which is insane to me.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It is.
What?
I think Better Call Saul would be a much worse show without that.
I could not agree more.
The relationship between Jimmy and Chuck and the relationship between Jimmy and Kim, I feel like are the strongest written dynamics in terms of like the entire show. I feel like there'd be no way to get through those first 3 seasons.
If they weren't planning that twist, all right, let's just say in a hypothetical world, that twist doesn't happen, the rest of the show is nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
It affects too many things. It's so right. Again, this is it comes back to...
But the motivation behind it makes a lot of sense. Like the things that Chuck does, you can understand why he does it.
Yeah, it's the way that Michael McKean, the actor who plays Chuck, portrayed the character when they first started filming that made them rethink some of the things at the very end of the season. Apparently what happens is they usually are like finalizing the couple scripts before they start filming the season, you know, so you can make slight changes in whatever. And yeah, I think the character was exactly how he appeared to be, kind of the supportive older brother who is who's wary of Jimmy's actions and pulls him back when he needs to. But they changed it into something completely that fuels the entire character of Jimmy well after Chuck's gone. And it's I think it was obviously the right choice. I don't think it'd be nearly as good of a show.
Phenomenal choice and so essential to Chuck's character. Now something else I want to touch that Bob said, and what we both said, but we both kind of like echoed it, where we said that Jimmy in a lot of ways really wants to impress Chuck, in a lot of ways really wants to be Chuck. The same could be said for Chuck, because I think Chuck in a lot of ways wants to be like Jimmy. He wants to be, we see his jealousy towards Jimmy, whether it's with his mother, the death of his mother asking for Jimmy, or we see it with his, I forget her name,
Rebecca?
Rebecca, with the scene where he comes over and is impressing her with jokes and making all these jokes, and then later when he's gone, Chuck tries to make a lawyer joke and it just falls flat in his head. We see him be very contempt and jealous of Jimmy, while also understanding why he's cautious and skeptical of his growth. It feels like both are in tandem, like they're not separate. Right. It feels like a lot of times his actions towards Jimmy comes from simultaneously a place of concern but also a place of spite.
Some of the stuff he says to Jimmy is just so bitter and vindictive and like you said, spiteful. Like some of the stuff like, you don't get to go through law school, University of American Samoa. I had to work for what I got. When technically Jimmy got he's
gatekeeping being a lawyer. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
It's Chuck at the core of his character, just like the judicial system, refuses to accept that people can change.
Yes.
That's right. That's his biggest.
That's almost, I would argue, why Jimmy doesn't change. It prevents him from changing. Because it's sort of like this ironic circle of events where Chuck isn't wrong with what he's saying, but a part of him, I think, the reason why he isn't wrong is because what he's saying is fueling Jimmy staying the same. It's almost like this vicious cycle that even past his death doesn't change. Like you'd think it might end with his death, but it doesn't. And that may be because some of the last words he says to Jimmy is truly just it's all because of the previous scenes of what he did to him in the courtroom. It feels the most spiteful. And also some of the most cruelest, like the last words he really says to Jimmy is, "I just never really cared much about you. You never
It's
really meant much to me."
there's nothing after that. That's the only last words. Yeah, it's the
And
very
that
last.
is, I don't think there's anything sadder than that. That's where really the tragedy comes with Jimmy's character. Because I mean, okay,
He's
Breaking
lying out of
Bad
his teeth, by the way. Chuck
of
is
course,
completely
Yeah.
a
of
liar in that
course,
moment.
of
He just wants
course,
Jimmy to feel bad.
of course. But I think a lot of ways, Breaking Bad, and we'll get back to Chuck. I'll let you guys
Yeah.
go for a while. I'll shut the fuck up. But I think Breaking Bad is a tragedy, no doubt about it. And I think Better Call Saul starts off where it almost feels like more of a comedy. Like as if this was a play. Like, oh, this is much more of a comedy. Not to say that there aren't moments of drama, like there are in often Shakespearean comedies. But then it definitely morphs way more into a tragedy. And almost a tragedy that hits a little harder because of how much the show's sort of like the vibe of the show really gets dark. And it is with that moment that I was like, this really like viewing Jimmy's character as less of a comedic tragedy and more of a pure tragedy. Is that moment for me that really did it for me. That scene really negatively affected me. I won't lie. I really felt things after watching that. But yeah,
Yeah, it's I wanted to touch upon the comparison you made to Skylar. I think that there's a lot more valid reasons to dislike Chuck in terms of the way I think that, yeah, touching upon like, well,
Absolutely.
is he right or is I think he happens to be right in a lot of
Yeah,
circumstances.
the root of his character is just the vindictiveness, basically. That is just
Yeah.
he does not want his brother to get off easy.
Yeah. I think that he is demonstrably wrong when he says that people don't change. You're slipping, Jimmy. Jimmy has changed in the 10 years since he's moved to Albuquerque. He's not the same guy. But Chuck will, no matter what Jimmy does, see him as slipping Jimmy. And I think that's again, that's the biggest part of Chuck's character is no matter what, he refuses to see any sort of growth or change, and he'll always treat him like a previous version of him.
and in turn, I think that keeps him as slipping Jimmy.
Yeah,
Because
that's exactly right.
Because what Chuck says is, technically speaking, never wrong.
Mm-hmm. If we imagine a world where Chuck's not that way and he does actually support his brother, I don't think that's a world where Saul Goodman exists. I think that
agree.
Because if you imagine, it has repercussions all the way to like 1990, whatever it is, where he says that he's gotten his degree as a surprise to Chuck. There's no Howard would they'd accept him into the firm most likely, and that would be it. I mean, I think at that point, I mean, it's impossible to say, right? There's butterfly effect.
No,
and huge
of course,
amount of stuff,
and it's all speculation. But in terms of like the show's themes and character growth, like Jimmy's attitude of the world being against him, really could just be, well, no, it was Chuck who was against you, and that sort of got morphed into that. Because for a long time he didn't know it was Chuck, so he sort of viewed it in the lens of everyone's against me.
Exactly
When
right.
it really was just one person, the closest person to him, that was against him, and that sort of morphed that attitude I think that he had, and that never went away, because he really, like, that attitude once he didn't get accepted into the firm really was like, they're all against me. I have to win. I have to prove myself. I have to get in here no matter what. And that is just a direct consequence of Chuck's actions.
Even stuff like Chuck talking to one of my favorite scenes, Chuck trying to convince Kim that Jimmy switched the numbers. This is right before Chuck goes to the actual photocopying machine and hits his head on the counter and all that. He has absolutely no proof or no reason to actually think that this happened. The only reason he happens to be right, again, he's not. It could be that he did mix up the numbers. It's not, obviously, but it could have been that he mixed up the numbers, and he still would have blamed Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it matters whether or not Jimmy did it. I mean, he did it. Obviously, it shows it. But even if Jimmy didn't do it, Chuck would still feel that way. He blames Jimmy for their parents not being successful in their store, whether or not that has inklings of truth we don't really know. We just have heard it from his perspective. We do know that Jimmy did steal from the store. There's a whole history that they allude to, which really, fleshes out the relationships. Yeah, I love the line that he says, "You don't matter that much to me." That's all Chuck's been thinking about the last 3 seasons. Is Jimmy matters a lot to him. Maybe not in terms of because the exact quote is, "I don't want to hurt your feelings, but the truth is, you've never mattered all that much to me." That basically implies that Chuck doesn't think that much about Jimmy. That's not true at all. He thinks constantly about Jimmy to his detriment,
That's his downfall, really.
Exactly. Jimmy hearing that, I know this is getting into Jimmy territory again, but Jimmy hearing that, he wants to reciprocate that. He can't because it's not true. That's what season 4 is about, is kind of pretending like Chuck didn't do anything to him. That Chuck also doesn't matter that much to Jimmy. Jimmy has a line in season 3 where Kim's asking, should we have really done the whole battery stint? And Jimmy's like, listen, Chuck's behind us now. Let's not think about Chuck anymore. He's we move on. We don't ever deal or think about him again. The ending of that episode is him going to the insurance place and letting them know in his own devious way about Chuck's condition. So that's obviously not true. There's a lot of lying to himself, essentially, convincing himself of what's true, even if it's not.
Absolutely, 100%. Okay, I guess before we move on to this, we'll talk about the scene. We'll talk about the battery scene. Do we want to touch upon, because it simultaneously is a big part of his character, but it's also his character is separate from that. Do we want to talk about like his illness, his clear mental illness that Chuck has? Do you think they do the good job like illustrating that and covering it? Because it is very difficult to cover topics of like mental health. And I think what this show does really well is it shows that Chuck has an illness, but his character isn't the illness. The illness doesn't define who he is. He's a character outside of his mental illness. I really like that. But I think a lot of people can watch this show and misinterpret his intentions, or his part of his character that obviously is pretty malicious comes from his mental illness. And I think that can be misunderstood. And I hope it's not misunderstood by watching this show. Because I think the show does a really good job of showing the fine line. And they do that by showing him before he had this, or at least before he was clearly had this mental illness that formed. But the show early on sort of plays with the idea, and that's what I think does a really good job of that, because that's what it really shows, like how real mental illnesses are to people. The show doesn't definitively say it really ever, but especially in the beginning, it does say more and more that it's obviously a mental illness. But it really makes you believe, well, is this real? Obviously it is. Mental illnesses, those are real, but like it makes you question, like, is the condition that Chuck have, like, is he actually experiencing outside of his mind? Is it a physical disease? And the answer is obviously it's not, but it makes you question that for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely think they did a good job establishing that he treated Jimmy this way before the illness, before he was allergic to electricity. And also, what's really interesting is that for the first 4 episodes of Better Call Saul season 1, they never talk about the electricity thing. They just show him in his house with lanterns and talk about him getting better and going back to the firm, but they never talk about why until he gets tased.
Scene, right?
Yeah, where the cops come and he goes to the hospital, and and they talk about it with a doctor and all that stuff. This is why I can never be a writer, because I don't think I could ever come up with that. Having allergic to electricity, which it's a very rare thing in real life. It is a mental condition. There's no physical anything like that in real life. Right. Especially because if you think about it, in chicanery, a battery wouldn't do anything electricity wise, but he still has the reaction to it because he thinks it will. So
well, all right, let's talk about it. We gotta talk about it.
Yeah,
we gotta talk about the scene, and I think actually we can tie into what we're talking about now, because in a lot of ways, when I watch that scene, it really is so nuanced and so filled with so many different dimensions. But what I really like about that is at the end, it really feels like Jimmy wins. by, taking down Chuck publicly in front of everybody, until you realize in a lot of ways, was it really winning, or was it exposing someone's mental illness as a benefit to yourself?
Right.
And it's very dark and it's very sad. It's one of the scenes that it's so complex, and it's how I feel about it. Not in terms of, I think it's a phenomenal scene, but in terms of me watching the show, how it makes me feel, the emotions I feel while watching it. It's so conflicting for me because part of me wants to see Jimmy win and overcome his brother. It's a big character moment for him, big literal defeating his brother in the courtroom. Even if it's a little, outlandish, because how it would work with the law would make no sense. But regardless, they stretch it a little bit too much, which is the only time they really do. But it works.
I watched a real lawyer react to chicanery.
Yes, Legal.
I also Legal.
Legal. Pretty good score still, actually.
Yeah, no, yeah, there were a few inaccuracies, but yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't really care too much about that.
Neither do I.
I'd rather take a good character moment than
Of course. 100%.
You know how boring law is?
Yeah, of course. But the show does really dedicate itself to that.
It does.
Really
It's considered one of the best accurate, which I think helps. They do have a lawyer on the writing team. They didn't hire him because he was a lawyer. They hired him because he was a writer, but he just happened to have been a lawyer previously. So that's really helped them, apparently. So I'm looking at the transcript right here, and it's very, very specific what he says, right? He talks about everything he says is true, but it makes him sound like a madman. I always kind of chuckle a little bit at him yelling he defecated through a sunroof. That was so long ago. That was in the 80s at this point, or late 80s. He brings up Jimmy when he's 9. I mean, the fact that some of these things are so far in the past. He does talk about the billboard incident, and he does talk about the paying off the guy, the copier machine. Yeah, and in his chicanery speech, it also reflects Jimmy's parents. It says right here, ever since he was 9, always the same. Couldn't keep his hands out of the cash drawer. But not our Jimmy. Couldn't be precious Jimmy, stealing them blind. And he's speaking from the parents' perspective at that point. We don't know much.
Right.
We know a bit.
It really feels like, in a lot of ways, both of these characters are on trial. Jimmy and Chuck. And it's their whole relationship. And that's what makes it so drama-filled and so interesting. And you see it really just is an extension of all the characters' motivations, all their flaws, all their reasonings. And you see... you see Chuck, he just refuses to believe people can change. Which, in terms of, law, is super detrimental, because the whole, idea of, punishment and...
rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation is that people can change, and law is supposed to help that process.
Yep.
But Chuck is so vehemently against it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of times the law, the legal system really, falters at that. And I think that's a lot of, and because Chuck is so dedicated to the law,
critiquing that. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I think Chuck reflects that aspect of the U.S. judicial system in a lot of ways. Agree. Jimmy, in that, I don't think Jimmy feels good during that speech. You look at his face; he looks very sad for his brother, actually.
Right,
which is
feels there's no one who feels more sympathy for his brother than Jimmy.
Yeah, exactly. Chuck does not reciprocate, and that's what hurts so much.
It's like the most built up dramatic scene of so many pieces happening of what is their plan, what do they plan to do. They build it up in the couple of episodes before where they're in a meeting with Chuck and their lawyers, and they kind of do this stunt as they're leaving. They go, "We got him." And it's got him on what? What they do?
They wanted to check if the tape was
right.
If he still had the tape, which they used against him in court. Yeah, it's the exact halfway point of the series so far. Yeah, it's not going to be, but
wait, it's not.
Oh, wait. Yeah, because there's 13. No, I'm sorry, I did the math wrong. Never mind. It's not the. What am I thinking of?
Wait, are there going to be more episodes in the last
season?
There's
13 episodes in the 6th season.
Yes. What? I did not know this.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I should clarify. I don't know that much about 6th season. I know
you just got me hyped. 13 episodes? Oh,
there's 13 episodes.
10 episodes does not feel enough.
Yeah, it's going to be first quarter of 2022 is when it releases.
my God.
Presumably, which is it's been such a terrible wait for me because I've been waiting for 2 years for the next season.
All right.
I've watched it as it's aired since season 3. But anyway,
So exciting. So exciting.
sorry, I'm getting off track.
No, we can honestly. I think we talked a lot about Chuck, and that's
True. And also, I just wanted to say he didn't even get nominated for an Emmy. Everyone was very upset about that.
Anyway.
The actor who played Chuck.
Yeah, everyone was like everyone was expecting him to, but he didn't. He didn't even get nominated.
He's clearly. I mean, so many talented actors and actresses on the show, but he's definitely one of the most talented in terms of like pure acting ability.
So in season 4, he got nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Drama Series, because he was in a few scenes in season 4. So people are guessing that was kind of a
makeup.
Yeah, or
makeup.
There's a word for it. It's consolation prize.
Yeah, consolation.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I mean, awards don't matter and blah blah blah, but.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's purely a popularity contest. So,
right.
And Better Call Saul is not the most popular thing ever. You can understand why. It does not have the mainstream appeal as Breaking Bad.
No, way more subtle.
Oh yeah, it is very slow paced. It is a slow paced show.
Yeah, although until the most recent episodes feel a lot more like that Breaking Bad aspects of like scale and like drama. Especially
I can't tell you how many people I've talked to. I can't tell how many people I've talked to who have said, "Yeah, I watched the first 2 seasons." Like people, it's hard to get for a lot of people to go through the first 2 seasons.
I think this show got me. I mean, okay. I love Breaking Bad, so it really had me the whole time. But like, it really got me with Mike's speech, but especially the gotcha moment or the pulling onto the rug with the twist of with Chuck being the one. That screwed Jimmy over the whole year. And then the end of season 1, I'm like, this was, oh my God, this gets better. I can't, how? All right. We kind of went to the big heavy hitters. We have a lot of side characters to talk to that are very complex and interesting. The first one I want to talk about, these we'll just kind of go through a couple of them. We'll give this one a little more than the other ones because he definitely is a pretty, what?
Nacho, right?
Yeah, Nacho.
Oh yeah, Nacho. You guys.
Yeah.
I wouldn't consider him. I would consider him to have.
No, I'm giving him. I'm giving him his own segment. But I'm just saying, like, out of the character that has their own segment, I feel like just compared to the heavy hitters we talked about.
Out of all the characters we mentioned so far, I think the only 2 who are missing from kind of the big heavy hitters are Nacho and Howard. I think everyone else is pretty much a little less.
After this, I have 3 characters. So we have this section, and then the next section we'll fit 3 characters in the one section and just briefly talk about them and then move on.
Okay.
Let's talk about Nacho. I was really surprised because Nacho's introduced in what was episode 2 with Tuco. He's Tuco's friend.
Talk about Lalo. Yeah, of course, Lalo. Anyway.
Oh yeah, we'll get to Lalo.
I mentioned Nacho and
you were trying to think, weren't you?
Yeah. Never mind. Yeah.
No, you figured me out. Spoiling it. No, I'm joking. Nacho, yes, I was really surprised because when he was in that scene, I never, even though like they were really focusing on him at some points, I was never really expecting him to become the character that he was. Even the subsequent episodes where he's interacting with Jimmy, I gotta say Nacho, they did a great job like changing my perspective on him because when I'm watching him in the beginning, I'm like, oh, he's bothering Jimmy, like, oh, what shady stuff is he gonna do? But they really do a good job giving him time to grow. And I wouldn't say that really doesn't happen until season 2. Not that he's in season 1, but he's much more of a side character in season 1 with his interactions with Jimmy, with his brief interactions with Mike. Like he's just
Tuco's henchman.
Yeah. It isn't until he wants Tuco to go where it's like, ooh, all right, and they really start developing him.
The
and then it's constantly the entire show. Yes, it's him like, all right, I gotta get rid of Tuco. Fuck. Now I gotta get rid of Hector. Fuck. Now we're gonna get rid of Lalo. Fuck. Gus is still here.
Yeah, so season two, he was under Tuco and then Hector, and then he spends season 3 getting out of Hector's way, and now because Gus knows about what he did, now he's under Gus's rule,
and Lalo.
Then now he's Gus and Lalo.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, God damn it, can Nacho get a break?
It's exactly right.
But Nacho, I feel like, is a much needed sympathetic cartel character. because we never really had that before. Like someone who directly is involved in the cartel, like as a like high up in the hierarchy. Like we don't really ever get to see one of those characters presented as a sympathetic one, and I'm glad that Nacho got that. He also is a good outlet and to explore, because just exploring Hector by himself is difficult, but to use Nacho as a sympathetic character to do that works so well. Same thing with Gus. It's how Gus really gets involved in the show. Even though they do use Mike for that too, but that's what I think they really do a good job of. Nacho is providing these like really cool, like, I don't want to say fan servicey, but more in-depth analysis or in-depth exploration of characters that are in Breaking Bad and fleshing them out more, while also introducing a very genuinely really good new character who again is very sympathetic with his whole plight with his father. Trying to save his father's wife.
Anytime his dad's on screen, I just feel so bad. Just like, let the man run his car reupholstery.
It's tragic,
stuff, please.
It's tragic, and it just does such a good job of showing the true evils of the cartel.
Yeah.
Or I say cartel, but of the drug business.
Yes.
And how it's impossible to escape.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it also shows that Nacho technically does have a way out, but he doesn't want to. It is the best course of action, if this was real life, is to go to the police and
of course.
reveal the stuff. And that's what his father begs him to do, is to face up to your actions.
Right.
There's I love the scene in season 5 when it's
when his
Nacho offering the money.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Wait, are you talking about the scene?
Season 5.
Where he tries to buy him out of his restaurant?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
At
that
first,
scene is phenomenal.
He makes it seem like it's someone else, but it's not.
And then his father was like,
he wants his father to get out, but they want I remember there was a very, very short scene in season 4 where they show he shows I believe probably fake passports to or I don't know, or it's identification cards, something like that, about going to Canada.
His father will not leave.
That's exactly right. Which makes me nervous.
Yeah.
I love the scene where Victor, the very beginning of season 5, they're pretending like they're gonna kill his father. Victor walks over and like as if he's gonna shoot him right there and then. I mean, it was never gonna happen.
Right, but he like puts his hand on his shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I love that scene.
So
both Gus and Lalo are terrible to Nacho.
I mean, he literally has to get shot, and then they fake like a scene, and they go through the efforts to make it as real as possible. So much so that he suffers beyond. I mean, there's a scene where he's with the vet, and he just has like the pus coming. Oh my god, it's so brutal. It's so brutal. But Nacho, besides that, isn't just a character that I feel like, like you mentioned, he's not just a character that, has these horrible things happen to him, and that's his whole character. Like you said, he has an out. He has a reason to escape, but we see him constantly push that back, and we see the effects of how it once you're in, it's really the whole thing that they explore in season 5 with Jimmy and Kim is once you're in the game, you're in the game. There's no quitting the game.
Yeah.
And even if he does go to the police, ends up in jail, he's not out of the game. He has a high chance of getting killed in there. So like he understands that there is no escaping the game, there is no escape from the effects of the game, only delaying it. And that's what they explore with Nacho.
Yeah, it's like it reminds me of his father begging him to go to the police and just admit to what he's done. Jesse does that to Walt at the very end of season 3, when Walt's about to kill Gale. Jesse's like, "You don't have to do this. Just go to the police." Skylar does the same thing to Walt as well. It's but it all makes sense in a character why they wouldn't do that. Plus, it's bad television. Like, just everyone turns themselves in.
And it doesn't.
I'll just go. I'll do witness protection program. It's fine.
But I think in the case of like Walt, where he's at, in a lot of ways, that would fix his problems. I think Nacho understands that won't because of the power they have. I mean, we see him literally get involved. Like we see when Crazy 8 has to snitch. By the way, which is a great, cool. I love that. Cool way of bringing.
They mentioned he's an informant in the beginning of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I love how they tied that together.
So like, and Lalo's talking about, we're gonna have to kill him, And then he's like, oh, like I think even then he's realizing like, yeah, the prison does not escape you from this. There is no escape. The only way to escape truly is death.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, is where I think that story is going. But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Or whose?
Just predictions, Nacho's story.
Oh, I thought you said Gus. I'm like, yeah, he does.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, true, but that's he. I think Gus is more a representation of the game than a victim of it. But yes. Okay. Anything else you want to say about Nacho?
People compared him to Jesse in terms of kind of sympathetic. I mean, I think that it's a more surface level comparison, but I can see where people are coming from with that. But
Like
people call him the Jesse.
He's the punching bag, basically.
He's a very sympathetic punching bag. He's a very sympathetic character that feels the true effects of the drug world.
Jesse also sometimes wanted out. So,
but we don't know. Nacho could get out. We don't know.
I mean, Saul does mention them in his first scene in, his first main scene in Breaking Bad. He mentions both Lalo and Ignacio, who is Nacho. So,
yeah, in Breaking, I'm gonna look up the exact quotes because it tells you a lot. Actually,
yeah,
they have to conform to that.
He says, "Lalo send you," and then I don't remember exactly what he said about.
He says, "Yeah, let me look it up right now."
Okay, go ahead.
Might take me a bit though. So yeah, he also screams in Spanish, "I'm a friend of the cartel. I'm a friend of the cartel," which is a big theme of season 5. That phrase in Spanish comes up a lot in season 5. Kim asks him, "Do you want to be a friend of the cartel?" Lalo asks him, "Do you want to be a friend of the cartel?" When he is about to be shot in the desert in Bagman, he screams the same thing, that he's a lawyer and he's a friend of the cartel. It's interesting to see that tie back, that he says the same thing in Breaking Bad. He says very specifically, no, it wasn't me. It was Ignacio, which is Nacho. He's the one. Siempre soy amigo del cartel, which means I'm a friend of the cartel. Jesse tells him to shut up. Lalo says, "Lalo didn't send you?" "No, Lalo." "Oh, thank God, I thought." And that's all we get from that. So I'm wondering, I know this is getting a little check. Do you think that we know what he's referring to yet? Could he be referring to the assassination attempt at the end of season 5? Because that was Nacho. That had nothing to do with Saul. That's a theory. He says it wasn't me, as Ignacio. He's the one. Saul knows about the assassination attempt. Mike told him.
Yeah.
Nacho was the one who carried it out. I believe Lalo does know that it was Nacho. He looks at the drink that they were drinking as he's telling the guy.
That's what you're thinking.
That's what I'm thinking. It could be something completely different, but I feel like they've set up.
You're thinking that in that moment, Saul thinks that it's that they're working for Lalo?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even put that together.
Yeah, I think it. I don't know if I don't think this definitively tells us if Lalo's alive or dead. I think he's dead because it would take the power out of Gus saying all the Salamancas are dead. I think it interferes too much with Breaking Bad. However, I know that Lalo does say, "Tell them that, you killed me," at the end of Better Call Saul.
I really like about the last episode of the show, or not the show, the show so far, the last episode of season 5, is Nacho really does get a huge focus. Like a lot of the stories told through his POV, and I really like, because throughout season 5, like he's present, but he's not nearly as present. Like Lalo just steals the show, really, to be honest. And I like how they give Nacho that episode to really dive in his POV, and then like obviously Jimmy and Kim are still in there, but they very much take the back seat in that episode.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nacho on the phone with whoever he's talking to, right? He takes a phone call in the same bathroom that Gus later vomits in Breaking Bad. It's the same exact bathroom. And he talks about, hey, there's family members, there's old men and women here. Like, what are you going to shoot them up? And it just hangs up. And it turns out, that's what they did.
Yep.
And so,
again, it's showing the means to the end. There's no escaping.
Yeah. It's also the first time we've seen Lalo mad ever.
Yeah,
he's never been mad except for that.
Yeah, well, I think we see him he's mad, but I think he always hides his anger and his emotions through this.
First time he hasn't hid it.
Yeah. but I guess there's also no one watching him, so why would he?
Yes.
But you are right, and I think that we're actually going to see that, which is fucking terrifying. Speaking of, let's get to side characters. I have Lalo at the end, so we'll talk about him. Let's talk about, and not to say that these characters don't have depth or they're not interesting, it's just they don't have nearly as much screen time, and if we talked at length about every single character in the show, we would be here, by the time we'd be over season 6, would be done. Yep. So let's get on now to Gus. So Gus, for me, I knew Gus was in the show. I just couldn't avoid that spoiler, which is fine, I guess. It's fine. But in a lot of ways, I was like, with Gus coming back, I just was kind of like, all right, like Gus is gonna come back, and whatever, like it's gonna be Gus. But opposite, I think they handled his return very well. I think his reveal was very fan servicey, and I think that's fine. You can give it to us. But his character never really feels like that. We really just get mostly the extent of the arc and motivation that was building up, or that was revealed rather in Breaking Bad. That being his reasoning for being in the game and his reasoning for taking down or working against the Salamancas, especially Hector. And yeah, I think Gus is really good in the show. I don't really have much to say about him. I think he has some really incredible scenes. Some of my favorite scenes actually are with him in Los Pollos, where he'll like interact with the staff. Those are my favorite scenes and great performances. Yeah, I a couple that come to mind would be the one when Hector shows up to the store. And after, or shows up to the restaurant, and they have to close early, and afterwards he has this like whole grand speech in front of his employees being like, yes, and he came here throwing me money, and many times I just sunk and gave him, but this time I stood up and I fought back, and they're all just like clapping. But then the other scene is also in that, is later with one of the same employees. I think it is season 4, maybe it's 5, with where he's asking his employee to clean out the deep fryer. And like he's like, no, do it again, until it's right. And then eventually he's like, you leave, I'll do it. And he just does it. And there's so much symbolism behind that. Some of which I think I caught, and some of which I think I didn't.
I think I know what that scene's about.
Go ahead.
At that point, do you remember what the scene was intercut with? It was with Hank and Gomez or Domi chasing the person that they set up there. He's sitting at his desk in front of his phone. He has absolutely.
He has to take the L. He has to compromise.
Yes, that's exactly
compromise in order to save everyone's ass.
Yeah. Right now, he has no. He doesn't know how this is going to turn out. He has no control over the situation. Gus is a big control freak. He needs control.
Crack the code.
That's exactly what he's doing. He needs something to control in that moment. He's very nervous. He doesn't show it. That's how he shows his nervousness, though. Is through he doesn't actually seem nervous, but it's through his actions.
It's through his intense, like not even borderline, like just like I don't know the right word, but like insane levels of control that he needs to have in every particular way. We talk about this in Breaking Bad, whether it's the way he presents himself, whether it's the way he runs things. Everything is so particular.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments with that in Breaking Bad is when, after he poisons everybody, when he goes to vomit in the bathroom, like how careful and neat he is with like putting the towel on the floor for him to kneel on before he throws up in the toilet.
I mean, we talked about it. The last thing he does before he dies is adjust his tie.
Yeah,
it's the last thing he does.
It sums up the character.
And that's what he is in this show. I don't think this show is like we're gonna see how Gus has really changed since Better Call Saul to Breaking Bad. It's more of seeing the roots of where that carefulness and his attitudes come from. And just like, we already know the backstory of Gus. This is just more like Act 2 of that, basically. If his backstory and the death of his friend is Act 1 and Breaking Bad is Act 3, this is Act 2 in a way. Which it's full of a lot of sinister moments though, and I think it's just the performance.
We have here's my hot take. I don't. This is my first criticism I'm happing upon.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
I don't think Gus is as interesting or as good of a character as he was in Breaking Bad. I think he's still agree. I think he's still good in this. I'm not saying anything's bad.
Yes.
I just don't think I think that he's a little bit I mean, you talked about character change and stuff like that.
Right.
I feel like nothing too unexpected, which is kind of the bread and butter for me, comes out of Gus. That's not necessarily a bad thing,
Yet.
but it feels yes.
Yet. I feel like season 6 is going to be
one of my favorite scenes with Gus is that washing of the thing, because that's something where I actually had to sit down and figure it out. I haven't felt like that at all for any of his other scenes where I've had to really figure out what's going through his head. I feel like he's been, while it works with his character, and I don't think he's acted out of character, I feel like I haven't had to think about his character very much.
And I think you're just comparing just how excellent his character is in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think you're right. And I think more has to do with dynamics. I just think the dynamic between Walt and Gus is just so good. The way they mirror each other, the way that Walt is obsessed with taking him down and becoming him. That dynamic is good. And I think they explore that dynamic with Mike. And we talked about earlier with Mike, like trying not to kill his friend and trying, you know what I mean? Gus is sort of like that relationship between those two characters. But you're right. It's not, I think it's not that Gus isn't as interesting, but the dynamics with Gus aren't as interesting.
Yeah, I think
that's what I think. But I think that, again, and I don't want to be like, this is a criticism and then immediately be like, let's ignore it. But I want to say that I think that the show is trying to, take the focus away from Gus and put it in more of the hands of other characters like Nacho and Mike. And I honestly would rather see that. But I do agree that I do agree with your assessment. However, I'm very interested because I think season 6 is going to change that. Because we know even right now that Mike and Gus are clashing over the fate of Nacho and him as a human and him as an asset, as Gus says. So, I think there's going to be a breaking point, and obviously I think we know who comes out on top, being Gus over Mike. Or at least like in terms of like who's subservient, because we rarely see Mike question him in Breaking Bad. But I'm excited to see that maybe that will change, because it feels like they're really building towards Lalo, Nacho, Gus, Mike, all of those characters having this showdown, so to say.
I should clarify. I found him the most interesting in season 5 so far. I think they're working to improve that. I agree. Absolutely. I find him more interesting through the lens of Mike than just Gus by himself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think season 3 is probably his weakest. I don't think he really adds much to the show.
Yeah.
And some of his scenes really feel fan servicey, which I don't mind as a fan, but I do agree with that.
Yeah, speaking of little quibbles, I did not like the scene where he was sitting by Hector's bedside talking about the cat back in Chile.
When he's in the hospital.
Yes, there was a scene. I like that dynamic of him. I just didn't feel like that scene was as well written as I've come to expect. Now with this show, it's still okay. It's still good, but it's not as it's a little quibble.
I think none of your statements are that hyperbolic, and I can actually agree with almost all of them.
Okay,
I do very much like the part in season 3 where, like with Gus, where he saves Hector though. That is a really, really good moment where he's the one who.
Which scene is this?
This is when they're in the parking lot and Hector's having the Hector has the stroke. Yeah.
Yes.
It's the one where he does CPR.
Right. Yeah, he does CPR on.
I do agree. Yes.
That's one of his best.
The
moments.
finale. That's right. Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. It tells. I love that the fact that he doesn't want Hector to die. We saw that in the season 2 finale with the don't note. That's why he's not. He's kind of he's angry at Nachos because he needs Hector alive. But because of Nacho's influence, it has created a different dynamic. Which is interesting.
All right, let's move on because there's so much to get to. Another character we talked about briefly, although I've talked about a little bit before, but we can talk about now. I actually have to say more about this character than I do Gus, so I don't know why. I didn't put this in any particular order, just as the order I put it in. And that's Howard.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Howard for a bit. We talked earlier about Howard, how in the first season he's presented to be this like almost like enemy to Jimmy, and you're like, oh, it's this fucking bastard who's doing all this. He's the one who's preventing Jimmy, and then the whole twist. So I think what we can focus on Howard when we talk about is we can talk about his that which we really kind of talked enough about with season 1. I think we should just really focus on, for me, the most interesting part of Howard is how he griefs compared to Jimmy with Chuck's death, and his relationship and scene interactions with Jimmy in season 5. I think those are the most interesting parts with Howard. So let's start with season 4. I know exactly where to start. The fish tank scene.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
So, real fast. A pitfall that they have not gone with Howard, which I was afraid they would do, is he's all bad in season one, and then actually now he's all good. I
And they
think
don't do
Howard
that.
still has a lot of. He was
Yeah.
not nice to Kim in season two. The whole
No,
Kim getting
no.
Mesa Verde, that was not
And,
Chuck. I believe that was Howard. So
no, and him put it. No, Gus actually was fighting for Kim. I mean, I say Gus. Did I say Gus?
Yeah, you did.
No, not Gus. Jesus
Chuck.
Christ. No,
Chuck.
yeah, Gus was like Kim is so no. Chuck rather was fighting for Kim.
Yeah.
He was like saying to Howard like why is she still what room was it she was in
The mail room, or it was like
no
the document
was it?
doc review.
Doc review
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, and Howard is definitely more nuanced, and even with him, working with Chuck and the stuff that he does, to really help him out, feels sort of shitty, and even the way he cuts Chuck out at the end feels kind of shitty. We also didn't even talk about the insurance scene and the boulder effect that had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to talk about. Forget about it. Let's try to focus on the one scene. So yeah, after it's episode 1. It's the end of episode 1, season 4, episode 1. After Chuck has died, and Howard is talking about all the things that he did, like with him cutting out everything and doing, cutting out Howard from the firm. And he says the line of like, it's because of our insurance and I had to cut him. And then it cuts to Jimmy. And obviously he has that moment of realization like, oh my God, that act was a snowball effect that led to Chuck's death. And then he realizes that, and while Howard is sad and contemplating, and Jimmy has a chance to do the same, he looks right at Howard and says, well, I guess that's your cross to bear. What?
Yeah. I love it so much. Because that's one of those moments you have to figure out what in the world's going on in Jimmy's head.
That to me is like, holy shit. And like the look on Howard's face changing. And even Kim's is...
Yeah. It's... I love that scene because all three of those people in that room, Kim, Jimmy, and Howard, they all feel responsible for Chuck's death.
Absolutely.
In different ways. They've all, through their actions.
Yes.
I don't believe you can... I don't believe that all the blame is off of Chuck, obviously.
No.
He did make the decision.
And I don't think the characters are saying, these characters killed Chuck. They're just saying they're feeling guilty for the actions that they did.
Yeah.
Ultimately
feel
hurt a
guilty
man who needed a lot of help.
Right.
But you see how each character reacts differently. Now, I do like a sort of like a follow-up scene to this scene is when Kim and Howard have an interaction, in which Kim, which is the will, and it's like Chuck is giving like an insultingly and low number of assets to Jimmy, and Kim in that scene also says like, you really dumped that shit on him. Like you really
they're both
dumped all your guilt. And they're both right. I think everyone in that scene feels right, except for Jimmy. Not to say there's a right way to grieve, and I understand the show is a tragedy of the way he grieves, but it really feels so... Do you know the right word?
No. I understand. That's why I love season 4 so much, is because it deals with topics in such a unambiguous, or in an ambiguous way.
Very.
It doesn't spell things out, and I love that about the show. You have to really think about it, and you have to do your homework, essentially. You have to really think about it. When it comes to Howard, I believe that part of what he was doing was he needed to really get it off his chest. The fact that he didn't tell anyone else about his theory about Chuck's suicide, which happens to be right, does tell a lot about him. It wasn't... I don't think it was... It obviously wasn't made to make Jimmy or Kim feel bad. It was to make Howard feel better. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, though. He needed to... he was feeling such strong emotions about his role. He needed to relieve himself of that. And so, but I think Kim's also right in terms of he's talking to the guy's brother, right? Does he really need to talk about the specifics of, fire?
It definitely feels a little tone deaf from Howard's perspective.
Exactly right.
But you also understand where he's coming from, and
Absolutely.
you understand, and you see the moment that Jimmy has, like Howard, to take account for his actions, or at least go through the grieving process of recognizing that. Anything before we move on to season 5, Howard? And that one scene that I'm very excited to talk about.
Yeah, real fast. Jimmy, I didn't understand the scene before the first watch. it's when Jimmy is talking to Howard is looking still disheveled. He's in his office. He's talking about how HHM's not doing as well. And Jimmy tells him to, get it together, right? And
Right. It's such a great scene.
I didn't realize it first time watch. Jimmy's talking to himself, thinking about the circumstances of
Yeah.
exactly what's going on.
Right.
It's when he's that's about when he starts doing the cell phone stuff, I believe.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And so, yeah, that was another. Howard wasn't in that much of season 4, obviously, but
Yeah.
the scenes where he was in, because it wasn't necessary to see all of his. We could fill in the picture in between the scenes.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Yes. Yes.
He's doing much better by the end. With when the last time you see him in that season is, well, it's during the when he's talking to the students, but he's also, again, the specifics.
Yeah.
It's the reading room that Jimmy paid for.
Yeah.
I mean, as a ploy, obviously, but
Obviously,
Howard's looking much better there, and he's much better in season 5.
Well, that also follows the conversation that we were talking about, where he says, "Get your shit together," and then Howard literally says, "Fuck you, Jimmy," and he goes, "There you go." That's it.
That's exactly right.
And as Jimmy always does, it is just him. As you said, what's the word? Like
Projecting, talking to himself.
projecting.
Yeah.
It's him projecting. Yes,
Classic
Jimmy
projection.
is so
He does
good at it.
He does it so much.
Does it to
the reason why
everyone.
is because it's such a good writer's tool to show instead of tell. Right? It's
100%.
not Jimmy going, "Oh, I feel this way about myself. I blah 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 blah." It uses what we know about the character to reveal more. Like his whole speech to I don't remember her name, but the gal who didn't get the scholarship and Jimmy felt that she should. That's all projection. That tells us so much about him without being too on the nose,
Yeah, it's a way, like you said, showing, don't telling. It's not a way to like, hey, let's give this character, right. What's the phrase? God, I have such brain farts today. Whenever I do these discussions, I always happen to have them. It's not like expository dialogue. It's like very much like, we'll show not tell. You know what I mean? Jimmy's not like, I am now doing this because I feel this way because they know how to write a fucking show, and I'm very happy they do. But that also gives it the rich amount of subtlety it has, which is again, in a lot of ways, who is more subtle than lawyers if you think about it. Anyway, okay, let's talk about that season. Let's talk about season 5.
I love. Oh man, this is some of my favorite stuff.
Howard season 5, and so basically, it starts off with what does it start off? But we see Jimmy doing these tasks. Like, what is he doing? With throwing bowling balls on his car and hiring one of the best, funniest scenes, hiring prostitutes to show up to the restaurant and be like, "Hey Howard, how are you?" and like embarrassing him, and that all culminates with meanwhile Howard is offering Jimmy a job.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that Jimmy wanted in season 1, all this time later, offering the job.
Yeah, that's what I love. It's that as soon as it doesn't make sense for Jimmy to get the job, that's when he's offered the job.
Yeah.
It's right when he's established this defense mechanism called Saul Goodman.
Yep.
That's when
it's too late.
It's now available. It's
so
Saul
ironic.
rejects the job that Jimmy wants, essentially.
Yeah. Well, it's not that he doesn't even reject it. He just doesn't reply. He just doesn't think about it. Or he does probably think about it, but he doesn't say anything. And we see him do all these things to Howard, and it culminates in what I'm going to say. Are you ready for this? Bold. This is a bold statement. My favorite scene in the entire show. So,
Yes.
You agree with me?
I feel that. Yeah. The one where he's chasing Howard down the hall. I love it so much. I remember watching trailers for Better Call Saul, and the line, "You can't conceive what I'm capable of." It shows him shouting that, and I was racking my brain before season 5, like, what is the context for that? I can't wait.
Right,
and it
right.
lived up to the hype. I have so many feelings about that scene. It's so good. It's so well acted.
Incredible. I think that is obviously that's way more of a Jimmy scene than a Howard scene. But we're talking about Howard. Let's talk about it. All right. Yeah. So it culminates
with.
I love the shot that it starts with where so the context of the scene is it's the trial of he's in the courtroom because of Lalo, and he's getting Lalo off, and he clearly feels very guilty about it because the family that got murdered, or not the family that got murdered, the family of the murdered the worker that Lalo murdered is in the courtroom, and he's looking at them, and you can see him feeling bad. So the scene starts him looking at the family grieving from a corner, and there's the surface of the wall next to him is reflecting. So like it has this almost humorously looking shot
Face.
where you see the two face of Jimmy, but it's like slant. Each of his faces like slanted, so it does not quite half of a face. It like meets at like a weird point that looks kind of humorous and almost monstrous.
Yeah.
Because probably that's what he's feeling. I'm assuming.
Like an abstract
shot.
painting.
Yeah, it's such a good shot. And then it's that scene that they follow that up, and I think that scene with Jimmy, he's sort of expressing a lot of what he feels about Saul, like how he feels as Saul. I think of the feelings he's feeling following helping Lalo, but also like the feelings he has towards his brother and Howard as a consequence of that. That scene is so layered. Like there's so many different layers to why he, I would say outbursts at Howard, but outbursts isn't even the right. I mean, he outbursts, but it almost feels like outbursts almost feels like it comes from an emotion of like anger, which I guess he is, but his words are not like, screw you, Howard, I hate you, Howard. It is, you mean nothing to me. Your offer, which was so big to him, is so little. I didn't even think about it. I am, you can't conceive what I can do. I can shoot lightning bolts from my fingertips. And it's just like, oh my God. Like it is the true moment where I think defined Jimmy, or really actually defined Saul.
I can't talk with this scene without talking about the dinner scene in like episode 4, which is the same scene as the bowling balls. It's when Howard offers the job. There's a lot there too. It starts with Jimmy rubbing his ring as he does. I love that they pick the moments when he does that. He looks very defensive, but he can't act like it in front of Howard. Howard offers him the job. This is maybe a little on the nose, but I like it. Howard orders the soul, and Jimmy doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
There's Howard asks, well, tell me about Saul Goodman. Jimmy talks about defending the indefensible. He's obviously talking about himself, defending the little guy, right? And Howard brings up the question, well, couldn't Jimmy do that? I love that question because it kind of cuts to the core. It kind of stops him in his tracks. Jimmy is not expecting a job offer, right? He still views Howard as Chuck. That's the main thing. He never got the chance to express a lot of the anguish he still has towards Chuck, because Chuck is dead, right?
Yes.
And so he uses Howard in that way
as a vehicle to do that.
It's exactly right. It's the reason he does the bowling balls and he's the reason he doesn't say no. He obviously would never take the job, but the reason he doesn't say no is to keep Howard in suspense. He's
right.
torturing.
He wants to feel that power. He wants to feel that power over him that his brother had over him.
That's exactly right.
And he's doing that right back at Howard. And it's like, it's so, you can't help but feel so bad for
the
him.
whole. I didn't understand the whole Namaste license plate thing when I first watched it, but looking back on it, it's all about how they've dealt with that. Howard's at peace, right? That's Namaste. Howard's very careful in that scene not to mention Chuck by name. He says, "We did you wrong at HHM. We, you were an asset and we wasted you." I think he mentions Chuck once, but it's more like Howard can say his name, Jimmy can't. They're talking around each other, and it's Jimmy. Howard being at peace just aggravates Jimmy. That just gets under his skin.
Right.
He cannot handle that. Because to him that's impossible. Right? There's no way. Right. Howard he wants to bring Howard down to his level. Again, it's a height thing. Right.
I mean, that the words that the adjectives and the words that Saul uses in that speech, is related to size. You're small, big. I can this power that I have, like lightning bolts from my fingertips, like that power that comes with that, the symbolic nature of that.
This scene is essentially Saul's "I am the one who knocks" moment. Like, to compare it to Breaking Bad.
I've heard people say that.
Yeah. It's a very good one. I never thought about that.
It's him just like proclaiming his dominance over whatever the situation is, and not needing to worry about whatever puny job that Howard's offering him.
Right. He's truly Saul Goodman.
Yes.
When people make that comparison, a lot of people point to the one who knocks scene as like this very like Walt's so powerful in that scene. He's so tough. That's such an insecure speech that Walt's giving.
Of course.
It's
No, it
so
really
is.
is.
So is Jimmy's.
This one. It's
exactly
perfect.
right.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
they're so it's exactly no. I'm agreeing. It's
Yes.
very. They're both coming from very insecure places.
Yes, absolutely.
Walt is so wrong in that I am the one who knocks speech that he's not in
Yes.
danger. He's in the most danger he's ever been in his life. Like, and it's the same for Jimmy. I'm looking at the transcript right now. These are very carefully written words. Bacterium. He uses it's a bacterium. If you notice the scene before, there's this mold on the ceiling that they keep framing right next to Jimmy's head.
Yeah. I know exactly.
Apparently behind the scenes that mold was just there. But they used
how come,
it, right?
All of these scenes where we're talking about these very important things, like just always coincidence, but it's just great.
It's because they know how to use the crew. There's an insider podcast I've listened to, which is very, if you're ever interested in very technical stuff. Anyway, it's basically they talk about how they filmed the scenes and stuff, and because it is a TV show, and because they have restraints, they have to use everything at their disposal. And that's one of those, is that there's a lot of happy accidents that happen. A lot of things you might think are intentional symbolism might not be. That doesn't take away from the fact that you can take them as symbolism, right?
Yeah, that's what makes art so interesting to consume.
Absolutely.
And TV for that reason.
And the very, very specific words he uses, lightning bolts shoot from my fingertips. I mean, come on, that's an electricity chuck thing right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
True.
very much
There's a connection there. Yep. That was his weakness. Yeah. Oh my God.
It's beautiful. And what sets it off is Howard saying, "Jimmy, I'm sorry you're in pain."
Yes. Howard has grieved.
Yeah.
Howard has moved on. Howard at this point is unironically kind of the I don't want to say the hero, but the one who has taken the right path.
Jimmy says, are you listening to yourself? Bowling balls and prostitutes? You're sounding a little unhinged. And there's like a 5-second moment where Jimmy kind of just sits there smiling at Howard. And the acting is so incredible. You can tell it's like this fake, like facade of a smile. It's very, and Howard sees right through it. And he says, "Jimmy, I'm sorry you're in pain." Saul Goodman is a way for people not to see Jimmy McGill. Howard still sees Jimmy. I mean,
he sees right through him.
Him and Howard
Just like his
are some
brother
of the
did.
only, Jimmy and Howard are some of the only. Howard and Kim are some of the only people who can see right through the Saul Goodman persona. It's transparent, and that drives Jimmy up the wall. He says, "You kill my brother." Jimmy does not believe that Howard killed his brother. No. That's purely to get under Howard's skin. He does not blame.
That's the defense mechanism.
It's exactly
Saul's
right.
Always on defense. He's always
trying to make Howard feel as tiny as possible,
and he's always ready to deflect.
You can't. Let's see.
And project.
Deflect
and project. That should be a slogan.
You have no idea what's going on. You're in a teensy-weensy little bubble. That's how Saul doesn't see the bigger picture of the cartel. That's how he's feeling. It's it's just so brilliant, and the acting's so good. And this is the season that he didn't get nominated. I can't believe it.
Which is probably his best acted season.
It's exactly right. I agree. I think he's getting better and better every season. And this is the one season he didn't even get nominated for Best Actor.
It happens.
I keep bringing it up.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It just goes to show how shitty award shows are, and they don't. Whatever. They're mostly wrong. Anyway, we can always talk. My best example for when people talk about the Emmys is I just point to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's what I do. I point to specifically the episode Charlie Work, which is the episode.
I've heard of that.
My favorite episode of the show. That I watch it. If you watch that episode, you keep it. How the fuck did this not get even nominated?
That's the one with the really long take. It's not really a long take, but
yeah.
I remember hearing
the Birdman-esque, esque take.
I need to watch the show. I've watched so many scenes on YouTube. I can't do that. I ought to just watch the show. I'm spoiling myself too much.
It's so good. So we talked a lot about many characters, and the last character that we have really not yet to deep dive on is probably our least deep dive, considering he's only been in the show now for a season and a half.
Season and 2 episodes, yeah.
Yeah.
He was in the last 2 episodes of season 4.
Yeah, which is Lalo. He did a lot in those last 2 episodes, though. Is Lalo. I guess this is hard because his character. No, I mean all characters obviously have an arc to finish at the end of the show last season, but his as being a new character, it feels like his rise to, I guess, being an antagonist, for lack of a better, I guess that's really what he is becoming. I don't know. Is in the middle of its growth. But so far, up to the end of season 5, what do you guys think of Lalo?
I love him.
He's
Me
so
too.
incredibly charismatic. It's amazing. It's like infectious.
While Gus also puts on this act, and he's very like nice and kind and sincere to manipulate, his act is almost that he's just he's so fucking charming, and you kind of hate it because you know how of an evil person he is, and the awful things he does. I mean, he's introduced it and like immediately kills someone pretty early on, an innocent person, and yet he just has a smile in this way. I think the scene that encapsulates him, I think we could probably maybe we won't all agree, but for me, it's the scene we talked about earlier with Kim. It's when he first comes in, he has that very charming outlook, smiling. But the more he presses Jimmy and the more he says, tell me what happened. Tell me what happened. The more you can see that sort of charming facade fading away until Kim steps in. And like you mentioned, Connor, we really don't see that really truly fade away into the end of season 5 when his family gets killed.
One of my favorite scenes with Lalo is the last few episodes of season 4. He goes to meet with Gus, and Nacho's there, and he goes into the back room, or the room where Gus has his laptop, his office, and he talks about. I don't remember. It's really interesting. He's disrespecting someone, and it doesn't quite make sense for him to disrespect because he's feeling Gus out. He's trying to suss out Gus's feelings towards. I believe it's Donald Audio, maybe. I can't quite remember the exact person he was.
I think so.
He was kind of dissing them, and Gus didn't go along with it because he's too smart for that. But it was really interesting seeing Lalo work in that way. That was kind of our first introduction.
Because his manipulation tactics,
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's so interesting the way in which Jimmy and Lalo come together in season 5 from their Nacho connection, which they haven't seen each other since season 1. It's really interesting. Again, I'm just getting back to Jimmy now. The Jimmy lowballing, Jimmy not really sure like what price to give as a
Lalo.
bill.
Right.
He says like 1,000 something, which changes dramatically throughout the season. That number. I mean, it goes to 100,000 at the end. He does the same thing. It's mirrored. And I think that Lalo is very aware of who Jimmy is more than a lot of characters are. The whole just make money thing, the JMM on the I think
what does JM mean?
Stuff's brilliant.
Justice matters most. And he's like
laughing
at him.
It's like,
he
just
sees right
make
through
money,
it.
dude.
He's just make money. Yeah.
Exactly. Him and Kim interact in the prison while Jimmy's doing the bagman thing. That was crazy.
So good.
Not happy that you knew about what was happening.
No. Yeah, that was one of the scenes where he was less embarrassed.
I think it was really honestly bold of them to introduce Lalo so late into the show.
I think it was bold of them to introduce Nacho so early too. Like because I understand.
The reason why I think it's so bold is because Lalo feels like so interesting and fascinating, and they love seeing him on screen, and yet he has only had so little time to develop. But they did such a good job with him. It's really bold of them this late to be like, all right, that's just one of the really new antagonists to the show. And they did that with Breaking Bad. They did that with the last season of Breaking Bad. And I know, like, technically speaking, I know he's in season 4, and there's 6 seasons, so it's like really just a little past the a season past the halfway point. But still, like, like for how slow developing this show is to introduce that late is awesome. I love it. I think they were good.
And also, I was never expecting the guy who he killed at the banking place while looking for information, that to come back in such a big way. Like, that's insane. Especially that particular scene of him going across the ceiling. The way he does it is he goes, those crumbling ceilings? Yeah, exactly. He goes across those and then it lands behind. That's
so cheesy. Okay. Well, here's the thing. I'll be honest with you. A lot of Lalo is kind of cheesy.
Yeah,
but I think
he's the most like stereotypically villainous character that they've had in the show, basically.
Yeah. I think they're able to subvert that in an interesting way.
There's that scene where he literally when he's looking for Jimmy's car, where he just fucking jumps in the air and lands on Jimmy's car. But I think in a lot of ways, Lalo is the most cartoony character in the show in doing that. But I think that is genius, or at least I don't know, genius.
I think he was better than, like, for example, the twins did. The twins to me were the same way, a bit too cartoony, but
but he has a lot more.
He has a very good way of being both unfeeling and very emotional at the same time.
I feel like he brings a lot of levity to the show, and in a lot of the Breaking Bad is a lot more cartoony in some aspects. I not to say it's a cartoony show overall, but it has some more elements. This show is very
realistic. Or not hyper real. Would hyper realistic be? Wait, is hyper realistic? Is that uber realistic, or does that mean? Oh, okay. So it's not hyper realistic.
But I think Better Call Saul is. It's way less cartoony, and it is in a lot of sense. It doesn't have like planes blowing up in the sky. It doesn't have like twins, getting run over. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that stuff, which is fine. I like that stuff from Breaking Bad, except the plane stuff. But whatever. I really like that aspect of Lalo. I think it adds some much needed levity in its antagonists to the show. Yeah. And I think that ultimately ends up making him only more sinister, because it's all of facade.
When he drops
and it's sort of like you kind of like get like he kind of like charms you a bit, and then when he lets his guard down, or when you let your guard down and you realize how sinister he is because he is that moment where he's cartoony, where he drops down from the ceiling, really fucking cartoony and silly, and then he fucking murders someone.
Yep.
It's like, oh shit! Like it's all a great surface level dressing that I really appreciate.
Well, it's interesting. Again, I've listened to behind the scenes stuff because I love that. But that was based on a real story that actually happened. Someone did go through the ceiling tiles and go back, so it is possible in real life, but it doesn't seem like it would be. You know what I mean?
The way it was presented, like how it was shot, like how he drops down, like he's like
another example.
But I think that is intentional, and I think it's great.
Another example is the car that he jumps on Jimmy's car off the cliff face. Behind the scenes wise, that was not how they planned it. It was they had the stuntman. They're like, hey, can you do this jump? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. The day that they went to film, the sediment on the floor, it had rained, or it had lowered quite a bit. The floor
this stuff is always unintentional, and
so the car was way lower than it should have been. But the guy still did it. He was still really good at it.
What you have told me is everything in this show is just coincidence, but it's like the best part of the show is like
some things are intentional.
I know.
But yeah, for sure.
I'm joking. I still can't believe that story about they almost fucking didn't add that twist with fucking.
I know. It's insane.
Anyway, with Chuck. Anyway, we got to move on. Yeah. So, fortunately, the next segment that I had, we kind of just talked about when we were talking about Howard and Jimmy. It was going to be like Jimmy and Saul, like Jimmy versus Saul. But I feel like we can skip that. We've just talked about it enough.
I have one thing I haven't mentioned yet. It has to do with compartmentalization is a big part of both characters of Jimmy and Kim, keeping things separate from each other. Yep. So I feel it can be complicated, and there's a difference. So Jimmy uses Saul. I feel like Jimmy knows that other people know that Saul is fake. Like, what I mean by that is, obviously, like, let's say Wexler versus Goodman, he obviously didn't how he acted as Saul in front of Kim was not the same. He dropped that whole thing and acted like Kim would be fine, wouldn't be angry as well. That they would keep the business side and the personal side of business completely separate. Like, I don't know how to describe it. What the scene I'm talking about, it's the one where Kim comes home after that whole Wexler versus Goodman fiasco, season 5, right?
Right.
And Jimmy is, I don't know if he's not expecting her to be mad, but it's more like he's trying to treat these things as very separate. Like, oh, well, that was our business, and now this is our personal, and
right.
The two shall not mix.
He's trying to sort of like I said, like really I can't even say the word. He tries to he tries to. Yes, I can't.
Got it.
Sorry. Some words I just cannot speak. He very much does that, and he really leads Kim to do the same, I think.
Oh yeah.
And I like that. I like that effect we see with she kind of starts doing that.
Yeah.
After that moment once they get married. But yeah, you're right. There's so much interest between Jimmy and Saul. I feel like we talk about all day, but there's some stuff I really want to talk about that we haven't even like. There's some stuff coming up that I really want to talk about that we haven't even even hinted at.
Well, a lot of the Saul Jimmy stuff I want to talk about is has to do with his actions in the desert in Bagman.
Okay.
If, for example, Lalo, the reason Lalo picks Jimmy is because he's a nobody. He's no one. He is. He won't be looked twice at. That's not Jimmy's strong suit. Jimmy's strong suit, as Saul, is standing out. And that's what he does at the end of the episode. He has the big old space blanket, and he shines, right? He's the distraction.
And by the way, I love the symbolism of the space blanket. Obviously,
I love it so
to
much.
Chuck.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that he refused it from
course,
Mike, that's so
Chuck.
good. I love that so much.
It's so good.
Oh, yeah.
That's a little less subtle, but I think it's really good.
I think it works.
It works beautifully.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people still miss it. So, I mean, it's a balance. It can be tough to, I'm sure it's tough to decide, well, how far is too far when it comes to symbolism.
No, I think it's great. I'm just saying, like, for how subtle the show is, it's probably one of the least subtle ones. It just if you pay attention a little bit. But yeah. I do like that a lot. It's really good. Chuck still lives through the show in such great ways, long after he's been gone. But yeah. That was a good observation. It's a good observation. All right, I think we talked about most of like our beefy stuff. We're really just gonna get to a bunch of like smaller stuff that I want to talk about. Maybe it won't be as long, but just so you know, give our opinions some stuff. I had favorite scenes up next, but I think we talked about a lot of our favorite scenes, so I'm gonna skip that. This is a good break. We get into some beefy stuff in a bit. We talked a lot about beefy stuff. I just kind of have a little fun, and just like get a little more personal rather than like analytical. What are your guys' favorite? Which season is your favorite?
It's a tough one. I know generally which seasons I prefer, kind of groupings. I generally.
For me, it's easy. I think they're all really good. I think they dramatically get better. And don't get me wrong, I love season 5 a lot, but my favorite is 4, personally. I think 4 is the strongest.
It's tough. I absolutely love the second half of season 5 so much. But as a complete season,
3 is really good too.
I personally would probably go with season 3 myself.
Yeah.
I generally have. Oh, I'm sorry. You can go.
No, that's it. I was gonna say season 4 is my favorite because I love I love the effects that Chuck's death has in the show, and like we talked about with Howard and with Jimmy, and just how subtle it is. Because when that death happened, I'm like, oh my god, Jimmy's character is gonna change so drastically, and we're gonna see that, and that is what happens. But they don't make a big to do about it. Yeah. They just let it subtly happen, and it feels so natural, and I love it. I also really love seeing the like we talked about with the Mike plot. I love his plot just a lot, and I think they do a really good job of introducing that element into it.
Kimmy, I swear to my, I have this thing where I accidentally call her Kimmy because of the word name Jimmy.
Yep.
Jim and Kim is definitely like that's definitely, and that has to be intentional. There's no way.
I don't know. But anyway, my favorite stuff is when they aren't getting along, when they do have a strained relationship. Some of my favorite parts of season 4.
Season 4. Yeah.
It's the unspoken strain, right? They don't talk about it. They don't talk. That's what some of my favorite stuff is, the looks. Anyway, I'd say it generally goes. And again, least favorite still I like a lot, obviously. Least favorite to favorite generally is season 1 to season 5. Least favorite around the first couple seasons to more favorite 4 or 5. I think 4 or 5 are pretty much tied for me. Season 3 is right there. It's so hard for me to rank. I feel like it feels like
this is just fun. We're just having fun. Yeah, I know.
It's generally, for me, it's getting better and better, which I really, I agree. I felt the same way for.
I agree. I just think I have a much more attachment to season 4 because it hit me very hard.
Yeah.
And also, again, the end of season 4 with the whole Jimmy becoming Saul. Like, there's just so much. Like, season 4 is I know it's not a one moment or even one season where Jimmy becomes Saul, but it is the season that explores that aspect to it. I love like the whole part where he tries to get back with the board, like we talked about arguing with Kim. Like I just think season 4 for me, like each episode is so strong. Like it is just from we talked about the first one. That's you're across the bear. That's season 4. All that is just so from the beginning to the end. There's so many phenomenal moments, and it really feels for me like season 3. Like you watch season 3 and then you skip to the end of season 5. It's like what like tonally, it's just like huh. Yeah. And that is all because of season 4 and what it builds up.
Season 1 feels so different to me tone-wise than now. In like season 5, it feels
season 1 tonally definitely feels the most standout
aesthetically. But it's interesting. There's a big. I'm really into like looks of cameras and film grain and all that type of stuff. Season 5, the skin tones are very different. I've heard complaints about that.
Like the character skin tone?
Yes. They're much more orange than they usually are.
Yeah, you know what? Now that you mention that, yeah.
It's it's because they started using different cameras. And people kind of debate whether or not that was kind of intentional or not. Or some people are more there's a lot more muted colors.
I think until we have to wait for the last season to say that. We have to see what the last season does with colors.
I don't know.
There could be a connection there.
Who knows?
I feel like that stuff, for me, if you're asking me personally, I refuse to believe I refuse to believe that's not intentional.
Yeah.
I 100% believe that's intentional. Because they are so careful with their shot composition, with the colors they use. And there's no way, for me, just of how of a nuanced and keen creator that Vince Gilligan is, there's no way for me that was accidental.
I should mention, Vince Gilligan has not been involved in the writing of the show since season 3.
Really?
Yes. He has only directed a few episodes in season 4 and season 5. He's back writing for season 6, but he was only in the writer's room for seasons 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, it's interesting, because season 4 is my favorite.
Yeah. That's interesting that... Yeah, well, again, it shows that it's not a one-man show. It's everyone.
Oh, it's never been.
Yeah.
Of course.
He emphasizes that so much from what I've heard.
Of course.
I might do a screen share in a tiny little bit because I have a kind of a good way of showing exactly what that tone is, or what do you call it? The colors. The beginning of season 5 is the same as, or the beginning of season 5 is the same scene basically as season 4, right? Same place, same costume, same everything. And to me, it's dramatic how much the colors have shifted, intentional or not. It's just really interesting to me. Do you see the difference though? Does anyone? To me, that's a very different color.
Yes.
Look at the skin tones too. They're much more.
Way more. And I did notice that when watching.
Yeah.
I just saw it. Now that I noticed it in my head, but I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
That's for me. I believe that, especially with the transformation Kim goes in season 5. For me, that's I know it's every character, but for me, I don't have any like actual source, but I genuinely believe that's intentional. And I think we'll see with what they do with season 6 to find out maybe if there's an evolution past that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that they would do that unintentionally.
Yeah.
From how much detail they put into the cinematography and camera work and colors.
Well, I sent the screenshots just in case.
Yeah, it's good to see.
I don't know if that means anything or if they did switch cameras. But it's an interesting
Thank you.
observation.
Yeah.
Anyway, what was the other thing I was going to say? No, that's about the biggest change really from like throughout the seasons. Although the tone gets slightly different.
Yeah.
Throughout, but it feels like the same show.
It was just meant to be fun. So season 3, 5, and 4, we all have different ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's basically
it's good.
Mine's probably tied between 4 and 5 with 3 right up there.
I mean, they're all so good. They're all so good. Even season 1, like I think season one's a very solid first season of a show. But it's just they build on top of the building blocks that they set up in season 1.
Yeah.
It's so damn good. But now you're gonna be fucked up with saying that they almost changed the decision of having Chuck not be the with the twist with Chuck, and Howard, and now I'm like, damn, maybe season 1 would have been garbage if that didn't happen, because like that was the whole hook for me for season 1.
Yeah. But I mean, thankfully we're in this universe where this out of all the universes, we're in this universe where the twist was here, so we're good to go.
We ready for the next section? I'm excited for this one. we're going to talk about something we have not even touched upon. Sorry, I almost said oh god because I really got a fucking sneeze. We've talked a lot about Better Call Saul, but we have yet to talk about the flash forward scenes, the first scene at the start of each season, sort of building this something up. And obviously, there's presumably at least one left. Maybe the show will end with it. Who knows? But I want to talk about this because I'm going to straight up say it. The first scene, the opening scene of Better Call Saul season 1, I changed my mind. It wasn't the whole, although it really was pulling the rug under us with the whole, like I talked about Howard Chuck thing that really got me hooked. But no, I changed my stance. It was the first scene of the show that got me hooked because goddamn is that a way to start a show? Holy shit! Mm-hmm. Just like watching in black and white with the Cinnabon, which is obviously a callback to to Breaking Bad, where he mentions that.
Yeah,
and I like that. And then seeing like all of this like visually stimulating stuff, all to see a broken down Saul go back to his empty husk of a house. This is the life he's living because of the events of Breaking Bad. This is what everything he's done led to, and that's a perfect way for me to start a prequel, is to not go backwards but to start going forwards and to show how everything that he has in his life now, his actions have led towards. And a lot of it's Breaking Bad, but even more of it's Better Call Saul. It's a really cool callback. It's almost like the show, these events happen after Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul is before it. So like Breaking Bad's in between both of them, but it really is the character transformation that leads to these moments happens entirely or mostly in Better Call Saul. What do you guys think of these scenes overall? I know there's now 5 of them. They all kind of simultaneously connect, or at least the last 2 have really connected. They all have different moments in them and different, I guess, like themes and character moments, especially comparing like the first one, for example, to the one where he helps or he tells the kid who's getting caught for shoplifting, get a lawyer. All like there's so many different thematic scenes, or the one where he gets stuck in the room. Like I don't know. Like overall, what do you guys think of these flash forward scenes? And not to get confused. Not to get confused with the scene during the show and one of the cold opens, but they flash forward to the Breaking Bad.
The Gene scenes you're talking about.
Yes.
The Gene scenes, and we'll talk about that other scene maybe later. But for now, let's go.
I've analyzed. I started because I love editing. I started editing a while back parallels between the black and white scenes and scenes from the current timeline in the show, and it's interesting to me. Also, I remember I've watched like all the black and white scenes back to back to back, and that's an interesting experience because usually there's a whole season in between those, and you're like, wait, what happened last time?
Right. Although I binged the show, so I had no problem, but I understand.
That's true. If you there's a crazy amount of callbacks to stuff that's happened in Better Call Saul at that point when the black and white.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As someone who's probably watched the show more than me, and as someone who watches back to backs, do these scenes, and maybe there's not including the first one because it's like the start of the show.
Yeah.
But maybe even including that one, does each of these scenes almost act as like a thesis to the season, or like act as like a? Because I can't make that connection if it's like does each scene like say something about what's going to happen or what happened in the last season or what's going to happen in this season, like a call, but you know what I mean? No.
Yeah, there's. I'll tell you the most significant.
Yeah, go ahead.
Things. Most of them have to do with Chuck in those scenes. We're going to get in some nitpicky symbolism here. You can feel free to disagree.
Let's do it. Let's do it because we're talking all about this. This is all we're talking about.
So just to recap, where the action really starts is Saul passes out, goes to the hospital. He's fine, takes a cab back to the mall because his car is still there. The cab driver recognizes him. He then flees to a cafe. He makes sure everything's good. He returns back to his work. Cab driver's there. Recognizes him again. He almost calls the vacuum guy, but realizes, no, I can handle this on my own. So that's basically like the stringing those all together. Him passing out looks very similar to Chuck when he hits his head on the counter. There's a shot of Jimmy on the stretcher when they're wheeling him out. That's very, very similar framing to Chuck when he's passed
Wait,
out.
that happens in season 4 though.
Yes,
right?
in season 4, he has already passed out and he's being on a stretcher wheeled.
And that's the same season where Chuck is on the stretcher.
That was season 3.
No, Chuck is dead in season 4.
Yeah.
No, but isn't season 4 episode 1 where we see him on this?
No, because he burns to death.
No.
Chuck is
Burns to
burned.
death. Yeah.
Yeah.
What am I thinking? I'm sorry. It's season 3 that we see. Oh, okay, sorry.
No, it is season 2.
I'm getting my seasons mixed up.
In season 2, when when Chuck is drilling the guy in the printer shop, he passes out from electricity, hits his corner of his head on the corner of the counter, and he's wheeled to a CAT scan, and he yells about CAT scans. That same shot is in season 4 black and white scene, except now it's Jimmy. Let's see. Here's an interesting one. In Chicanery, when the clocks are being taken down, the time is 12:16, which is the same numbers. 12:16 is the address number that Jimmy switched.
Oh.
So he either changed it from 12:61 to 12:16, and that's the same exact time. When they took the clocks down, it's 12:16. Now, it even gets crazier. In season 5, episode 1, the Gene scene, he's in a cafe. He doesn't order anything because he's hiding out, right? He looks at the clock for an extended period of time. It then cuts to the clock. It's 12:16. And he looks at it like with purpose, you know?
So he's still thinking about
it. That's exactly. That's one of the most blatant. I did not figure that out. I did not figure that out.
Thank God you're here, because like I would be here like, yeah, I really like the symbolism in this scene, and you're just pointing out like actual like really
that
impressive
clock
filmmaking.
thing's one of the craziest things I've ever come across.
That's
Someone else
crazy.
found it. Everything that I'm
my
mentioning,
God.
someone else has already mentioned
It's still
before.
impressive that you're here to know
Yeah.
it, so it's what we need. That's why we
And
have
then Jimmy looking out of his curtains of his apartment looks very similar to Chuck looking out of his, like a wide shot of his. Some of these are stretches. Jimmy, he squeezes a pump. When you have the blood pressure band around your arm and you squeeze a pump to make it. He does that in a very similar way to Kim in one shot in Something Stupid, is squeezing a stress ball under the table in a very similar fashion. Again, some of these are probably not intentional. It doesn't matter. It's the thought that counts.
Yeah.
So those are the stuff that I've noticed. Also, I mean, the journey of the shoebox. So basically, when he's hanging out with Marco for the final time, they show a flashback to those scenes in season 3 that take place in season 1. He grabs a Band-Aid container that has some coins in it. The next time we see that is when he's escaping his office.
Yep.
And he puts it in a shoebox and puts it in his blue luggage. And that blue luggage is the same that's actually in Breaking Bad. And then the next time we see it is the very, very first scenes of Better Call Saul.
Yep.
Where he's grabbing the tape, the Band-Aid container is there in a shoebox. And then the next time we see it is season 5, black and white, and he's pouring out. I'm speaking chronologically, obviously, not of when it's airing. He pours out diamonds out of it. So.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I got so many like little details in my brain. It's hard to find a way to not be randomly jumping around.
You got all the subtle like shit, but damn, I'm gonna bring it back to more like concrete because that was perfect. And now I'll ground it a little more. Just like I guess like in terms of like the scenes and how they act and I guess how the story continues. What do you guys think of the flash forward scenes? I do really like the last two and how they connect to each other. And it feels like it's building towards something. Well, I mean, the last one literally ended with him calling the vacuum guy, who the actor since has actually passed away since then.
Yes.
He passed away the same day El Camino came out.
It did. Yeah.
Oh, really? And he was in that. He said to, or Jimmy says to him, like, I'll take care of it myself. And that's where it leaves off. It's like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Oh, here we go. Here's my stupid knowledge coming in again. I've read the scripts for some of these episodes, and there was a script released for what do you call it? What was the episode? What was the first episode called of season 5? I don't remember. His names are maybe it was Magic Man.
I think so. That sounds very familiar. 50% off is episode 2, I believe. Yeah.
Here we go. So
50% is episode 2.
Here's kind of the ideas of what the scripts are like if you've never read one
Yeah.
of them. It's like a novel. It's written. I'll read it. So Al is the vacuum repair guy. He's like, you know the rest, am I right? A long beat. Gene says nothing. So it's goodbye, Gene Takovic. But in his heart, he was always more than Gene, the Cinnabon manager. He's Saul Goodman. He's faced down monsters. Now he's going to let some rando taxi driver run him out of his town. What about the next time someone recognizes him? Is he just going to keep running and running? Is that all that's left for him? Something has come to life in Gene's eyes. I've changed my mind. I'm going to fix it myself. Gene hangs up. He stares up the corridor at the people crisscrossing in the busy mall. And there's something new in his face, anger. He's not backing down. If this is going to be his last stands, then so be it. The worm has turned. Off this, ... intro. That's all in the script.
That is very much like a novel. And that makes sense. Because it feels like with the past scenes that's been building up. With first seeing his life in the first one, and then getting stuck in the door, and then dealing with having the with the whole being afraid of the cops and the police. Well, I guess that's the same thing. Being afraid of the police when they're asking him about the shoplifter, and he's like terrified they're going to notice him, or with the shoplifter himself, and then now this guy. Like, it seems like it's been building up he's been avoiding and cowering with everyone, and that's not Saul.
Yeah, but the scenes do a very good job of exploring how stressed he is about the situation, about everything that could potentially go wrong, and how he's thinking about it basically all the time, and he's always has his ears perked basically. So and the stuff at the hospital with the social security number and everything, it's just it's perfectly done.
Like, he's always on edge, and that is the moment where you just said, the script said, Saul Goodman shows up. Like, he's like, this isn't Saul. He wouldn't stand. He would not stand on this, or he would rather stand up to this. And what I really like is, I feel like that's what parallels the actual show, Better Call Saul, with these scenes, is like the moment now where he starts standing up and interacting with this guy coincides with when Saul shows up in the show. Because earlier in the show, when he's backing down and being getting all this stuff happening to him, and he's not really standing up to anyone, is when we're following Jimmy. And now when we finally start following Saul in the present is when we see in the future where his Saul starts to seep back into his life. That is now his life. That is Gene.
Makes a lot of
that's
sense.
where that might coincide. I just had that realization as we're speaking now. So that's just a theory. I don't know.
Should clarify. Obviously, I mean, this is probably obvious, but I don't treat the script as canon. It's just a blueprint for when they shoot the show.
Right.
So any description is, it doesn't necessarily mean that's actually what's going on.
I do think that description is very accurate of the scene. And again, we could argue the efficacy of what a writer has when they write stuff like that versus what viewers can observe and which one's more valid and stuff like that. It's a whole debate within itself. But I think that I agree with that's how I interpreted that scene.
Oh, the season 4 episode 10
that's
script.
The first scene you see. That's the first scene that you see after the end of season 4, where he says Saul Goodman and he is now Saul. Mm-hmm. That's the first scene that we see. Is him. That's the first example we really see of Saul. But go ahead.
No, that's right. No, I was about to say, there's not many scripts out there for Better Call Saul, just the ones that have been nominated for writing Emmys. But I remember reading, there's people have paired the descriptions with the actual scenes from the show, and it's one of the more interesting ones to me. I'm not going to read this one out. You can find it if you want. But it's when he breaks down in the car in season 4, episode 10. That description is really interesting. It leaves it very ambiguous as to why he's breaking down. Like the thought of Chuck rushes to him, and it describes stuff like that. There's one for chicanery and describing Jimmy's thought process and Chuck's thought process. It's apparently it's really useful for the actors to play off of, because if you know exactly what's going on in their heads, then it's apparently this is very, very weird for a script to have. It doesn't usually scripts are not written like this.
That is very weird.
Yeah,
that is very weird. Usually that stuff is given in direction.
It was the same for Breaking Bad. That same script type writing technique.
That stuff usually is in the script. Just the director directs that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should probably move on because we still have a few things to get to. We've been going for a while. Yeah. So that's enough with some fun stuff. Well, actually, that was really the beef of the discussion. I felt like we really talked about a lot. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to the last thing with side notes. And Connor, I know you still have to talk about your ice cream. We'll get to that. I know you're very excited. But I do want to say, and I know if you want to refrain yourself, Connor, or at least like intentionally leave stuff out for the segment, it's fine. Since you said you have some knowledge of the scripts for season 6 or something.
No,
like that.
so I just want to clarify. I don't know that much. The only thing I'll let you know if I can't comment on something. I promise.
But I want to make some predictions for season 6.
Oh, for sure. I can make predictions too. I can make predictions on a lot of things.
We're talking about seasons 1 through 5 right now. We'll probably do a whole discussion where we talk about season 6 because we'll have to. Because not only will that be probably in like a year by now, but like we'll be able to actually talk about endings. Because this script is we're talking about characters like Nacho and Kim, but we're just partially talking about them. We don't know how their stories end, and that's when we can really analyze stuff. So we'll do a whole season 6 thing like this. I mean, it makes sense. Actually, for the content we're talking about, for like everything we're trying to cover in such a short amount of time, is better for one season than the whole show. So it will probably work out better. But anyway, let's talk about predictions. I mean, we could just talk about general predictions of what's going to happen. We, of course, have the flash forward scene. We have characters like Kim and Nacho, and I guess Lalo. I think we can, but more I think Nacho and Kim, of where their stories are going to end.
I feel like Nacho and Lalo will also be intertwined where they end up, basically. Like
now,
you'll figure out where each one ends up with.
Do you think it's possible that two things, one of two things happens, or both these things happen? That one flash forward scene or where the scene's going actually connects to something with Better Call Saul, or in a more direct way, I should say, or that like it gets revealed that like a character that we, what happened to them, that they were around in Breaking Bad, but we didn't just see them. But they were there, like somewhere, obviously maybe not where Saul is, but like somewhere else, and they had an effect on Saul's character or his motivations in that show. Or do you think that like, if a character's not in Breaking Bad, it's just because they're dead or not relevant to the show anymore? I don't know.
The popular theory is that, well, if Kim isn't dead, then she's working with Saul, but just behind the scenes. I'm curious what your take of that is.
For me, that would feel a little bit too much jump to conclusions that we never see her. Like, it would just be like, it would just have to involve like coincidences. Oh, she was working behind the scene, but you just never saw her.
Right, and then they imagine they do that, and then they just cut in like scenes of like Jesse and Walt leaving, and then Kim showing up.
It's like Kim, you can come out now. And she comes out of the closet.
I made the mistake.
I don't know.
Going onto subreddits on their off season is just the worst. It's the worst thing in the world.
Everyone's bored.
Everyone's like going crazy this off season too. Because it's the longest one.
I feel like I could go on long spiels about the worst theories I've ever heard about what's going to happen. Oh, Kim was on the plane that coincided in the, and that's why he wears the ribbon all the time and in Breaking Bad. Or Kim is Wendy. Kim is Wendy.
If that happens to be the case, I will actually be so pissed.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of terrible. One of them is
no.
What if Kim is Wendy from Breaking Bad? The prostitute that's Jesse's friend.
Oh my God! What the fuck?
Yeah, no. It gets worse.
It's so bad. It's like comically bad.
Yeah. What if Chuck's not actually dead? What if he faked his death? What if? You know what I mean? Like, just
people are just come on, you're too bored. Go do something.
Yeah.
No.
My reasoning for why Kim is not with Saul in any capacity in Breaking Bad, this is my theory, or as to why, is because there's a line, and I've watched Bob Odenkirk's interviews. He does not read the scripts ahead of time. He reads them as they come in, so he's able to comment on season 6 before they started filming because he had no clue what was going to happen. His prediction was that Kim wasn't going to be with Saul because he said very specifically there's a line in the first episode where Saul makes a comment about following Francesca home and says, "God, you're killing me with that booty," and it's creepy. It's I can't imagine Kim being in that. It's the very first episode. He's all alone, so he's not showing to anyone. Right? It's right before he gets kidnapped by Walt and Jesse. It's at nighttime. They're locking up the shop. I'll bring up the actual
Yeah.
transcript, but it's
Yeah. Well,
there's
regardless
no
of that,
universe where he says that, and Kim's dead.
and just for the flash forward scenes with Gene, like it just doesn't make any sense that Kim would be involved in his life anymore. Obviously, he has a new life, so we know that
Oh
maybe
no, not during
she's
Gene,
left.
just during. Yeah, yeah.
No, I know. I'm just saying in general. Like I don't see if Kim is somehow involved in Breaking Bad, or like she's like living, or maybe he's even, because we don't really get to see his home life, maybe. But
Yeah.
there's no, that would so motivate whether he leaves as Gene or not. That would change that whole dynamic, and that'd be, yeah, and it would just add so much stuff to Breaking Bad that would probably be had plot holes. They'd have to be like, which they are really good at writing, so maybe they could find a way. But I think the more logical explanation is either she dies, which for me is what I see more with Nacho's
Yeah.
faith.
Yeah. Hey,
And fate, yeah, and it could happen. I wouldn't necessarily say, especially with what she's getting involved in now with the cartel. But for me, I think that there's a chance that there's a line, because there still is a lot of jumps that Jimmy, or I guess Saul, has to make to where he ends up where he is in Breaking Bad. There's a jump that's too far for Kim that ultimately severs their relationship.
Well, that's been kind of the prediction for a while is Jim. I mean, it seemed like in the show itself that's what's going to happen, right?
But now at the end of season 5, it may not be, because she's
Yeah,
supposed to be in it.
kind of throws everything out of whack. I
So,
will say
I don't know.
I don't think they're going to kill her.
I don't think so either. They would need to
Because
do it in a way.
I feel like there's
They
more
would
interesting
really,
ways to go.
yeah, they would need to do that in a way, because that might just devalue the whole character arc. Like for me, to do that, her arc would have to be complete, and then she'd die. But I just see that as, I don't know. Like I think that's a little too dramatic for this show.
Yeah, I also can't see Saul Goodman continuing what he's doing if what he's doing is what caused Kim's death.
Yeah, I
Right.
agree. I also just think, generally speaking, it would just make, it wouldn't really make much sense what they're building up towards. It would be much more impactful if Kim left on for a different reason, and that would affect Jimmy in a much more negative way than her dying. That just seems, yeah. So I don't think that's going to happen. As for Nacho, I don't know. For me, it seems for me, I could see him having like almost like a Jesse El Camino ending where he gets that sympathetic character gets an out. I don't know if he ends up in Alaska or whatever, but you understand my point. But I could also see it just being a tragic story of never being able to exit the game. And I think that if Nacho does die, that will have a profound effect on Mike more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And his character, especially because he's the one trying to save Nacho. And I think that could lead to something interesting, whether that makes him more subservient to Gus or whatever. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a conflict they're building there. But generally speaking, where do you see the story going? Because season 5 ends with how I never expected it to. There's a shot of Lalo angrily walking, obviously seeing the glass is not being consumed, obviously seeing that there's no dead body of Nacho, and kind of putting the pieces together. Where do you think they're building towards with that plot line? Like, is that just gonna like devolve into like a giant like cartel, or I guess drug war? Or what do you think? Like, I don't know. What do you think?
The only thing I have to draw from when it comes to Lalo is that line that they have to adhere to in Breaking Bad, which is, "It wasn't me, it was Ignacio. He's the one. Lalo didn't send you, no Lalo." None of that indicates whether they're actually alive or actually dead at that point.
Right.
It's true.
Only thing
Very
it
true.
indicates is that Saul thinks Lalo's alive, or
Yeah.
he thinks that the men who Lalo sent, he could be blaming a dead man. Like he could be blaming Ignacio, who's dead or who's alive, or he could, because he says, he doesn't say Lalo, is that you? He says Lalo sent you. So I mean, that again, when these
Right.
lines were written, they were literally comedic relief throwaway lines. Like,
Right.
oh, I get it. He's a part of cartel stuff. It was to let
I'm
the
glad
audience
they
know.
brought it back though.
Yeah, it's crazy. This is one line.
And they're smart, and I'm assuming I would actually not be I would not be surprised if Lalo survives and he's just in jail. That would not surprise me. Although Gus did say all the Salamancas are dead.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's two ways. It could be that Gus thinks he's dead. Somehow, for me, that
Maybe.
cheapens the moment.
That does.
Yeah.
And then
'Cause it's
somehow
not-
Jimmy knows. Yeah, I don't know.
It's well, it's season 2 where Jimmy says it's not me as Ignacio, and then it's season 4 where middle of season 4 where Gus says all the Sonolankas are dead.
Yeah.
Or
I feel like there is a chance that
Well, we
this
know-
could overlap with the beginning of Breaking Bad.
But the ending of the show, you're saying?
Right. The ending of Better Call Saul could overlap with the beginning of Breaking Bad.
Well, timeline-wise, how far away are we?
So season 5 ends. Let me bring up the timeline.
Yeah, he's got it all right here. He's got
I'll
the
put it in
scripts,
the.
he's got
I'll put it in the chat.
June of 04. And then Breaking Bad begins September of 08. So we're 4 years away.
We've only gone through 4 years in Better Call Saul.
We're still 4 years away.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
We've only gone through 2 years in Better Call Saul. It started in 2002. We're now in 2004.
Yeah.
That's it.
There's 4 years.
Jeez. So there must be a big time gap then between the end of Better Call Saul and the start of Breaking Bad, which makes sense because Tuco's out of jail. And we're not addressing the elephant in the room that Tuco's out of jail and Hector ends up with Tuco.
That's right. Because he's
that must
right
really
now,
point to Lalo being, out of the picture completely.
It could be that that safe house that Tuco's at, where he brings Walt and Hector's there. It could be that Hector just arrived there because Tuco's feeling in danger, or it could be that they live there. It could be either one. I mean, we don't really know.
Yeah.
Like if they live there regularly, or he brought Hector from the nursing home to there shortly before.
True.
There's no specificity.
True. But still, it's been important to note that Tuco is out. So
yes, he just got out within the Breaking Bad timeline.
I don't think this season, it would be kind of ridiculous. Even though it's 13 episodes, I mean, we could do something to break. No, I don't see like a Breaking Bad.
You're thinking episodes that take place during Breaking Bad? Is that what you're wondering?
No, I'm saying I don't see this season, the last season, spanning 4 years. I just see it. I could see it maybe going a year. I mean, they could do the Breaking Bad thing where at the end, after Ozymandias, they skip, like the last 2 episodes take over a long period of time. But assuming they go that same route, I don't think they will. But the fact there's 13 episodes does make a lot of sense. There's so much to end here.
Yeah.
So much stuff to wrap up. But for me, like I just from how I see it, I don't think this is going to end with the start of Breaking Bad. I think we might flash forward to it. I genuinely believe that we're going to have a flash forward at the beginning of season 5, and the show, just how it started, will end with the flash forward.
I also feel like we could have much more of the flash forward stuff in season 6 than we normally do. Like rather than just being button scenes, like that they could pop up more frequently throughout the show.
Yeah,
maybe have like 1 per episode or something like that because it's ending.
That would be a lot, but I could. That'd be having 13.
Yeah,
like that.
And it wouldn't be a couple episodes then.
Yeah,
I really could just see them having it in the first one, season 6, episode 1, and then end it off at the last episode with that.
Yeah, I've heard people theorize that it's the same. So every season, the black and white sequence gets longer consistently.
Yes,
it was like 10 minutes the first time. Wasn't
the last one shorter than the one before?
No. I can check. I have it all in a Premiere.
I'm pretty sure the season 4 one, because he goes to the hospital and it's the taxi driver scene. And in the 5th one is the only time that the taxi driver scene shows up. The taxi driver shows up. He calls the vacuum guy on the phone, and then it ends.
There's a lot of stuff before that, though. It's him.
Is there?
It's him listening to the radio while going down the road. It's him in the cafe, waiting for stuff. It's him grabbing the diamonds and pouring them all out. Let me look now.
Yeah, look at that.
That
would make sense then.
I have edited all of the Breaking Bad scenes that involve Mike and Saul into like 10 1-hour episodes, and so I'm probably gonna watch that before season 7 because it's kind of like Breaking Bad, or season 6. It's like Breaking Bad from their perspective. Oh, the final one's much longer. It's
oh, is it really? I don't remember the last one being way longer.
Yeah,
I don't think that I don't think they will end it off in the first episode. I think they'll carry it over to the end. I really do.
Yeah. This little,
they might end. I wouldn't be shocked if they end the whole taxi driver plot line at the start of season 6. But I think they'll flash forward to show him one more time as like a wrap up. I think they'll use it to show how the events of Better Call Saul led to the end of him as Gene.
I think.
You know what I mean?
The final, try to imagine the final minutes of season 6, episode 13, I think will be in the Gene timeline. The final
That's
minute,
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be. Yeah.
I think there'll be a like the ending to Saul will happen right before then, like in that timeline, and then it will flash forward to like reflect that or something, or like in a way. All right, we talked about a lot. I mean, what prediction? Do we have any more predictions that we want to say before we move on to our kind of final topic?
Timeline thing was basically what I was most curious about. Like, what is, how much is going to take place
Yeah.
during Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to jump directly? Is it only going to like be what 2005, and then it just completes this scene thing?
I don't think we see between Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad.
Kinda
No,
what
I have a prediction. Or rather a question, but I'll ask the question and I'll make a prediction. You know what? Well, I'll make a prediction, and then I'll see if you agree with me. I'll ask a question, and then I'll make my prediction based off that question. It's complicated, I know. Do you guys think he's going to get the, what is it, Sandpiper money? Sandpiper? Is that what it's called? Sandpiper? The lawsuit money for the retirement home.
Oh yeah.
I know too much.
Okay. What do you think, Bob?
I mean, I certainly think we'll get a resolution to that because it's so ongoing. But I'm not sure if he's going to get the money.
How
it could be how he gets his spot in the strip mall.
Office.
Yeah,
that's what I think it is. That's my prediction. Okay, we'll stop.
Can't comment on anything related to Howard.
That's okay.
Can't.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, they did a lot of outside filming. That's all.
Okay. Anyway.
That's all I know. Anyway.
Okay. Moving on then. Any last predictions, Bob?
Yeah, it's just so tough. There's so much stuff that could happen.
I know.
It could end up anywhere.
Go anywhere.
I want to see more Hank. I want to see more.
And that's what makes the show so that's what proves that this show has good writing.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind if I didn't see Hank again. I think it'd be okay.
Now, do you think everyone's saying, "Oh my God, they gotta bring Walt. Where's Walt?"
No, Walt does not need to be in here at all.
No.
Bring him in.
I don't want to see Jesse. I don't want to see Walt.
I don't want to see any of them. No. Even if it's like
I don't want to see like a cheap Jesse like cameo where like Kim is his like public defense lawyer.
No, the only acceptable thing, and even this, they have to really have to justify it for it, is if they flash forward a scene to Breaking Bad that we never saw before, like a discussion that happened off screen.
Yeah, that would be acceptable.
Similar to what they do in El Camino.
Yeah.
But even then, they would really need to justify it.
Yes.
Really need to justify it. And I can't see how that would have an effect on his character. Maybe in the future, but like how that would call back to something he like I don't know. Like it'd be really hard to make it not feel cheap and corny and too fan servicey for me. Regardless of that, we're gonna move on to our last segment. Side notes, things we didn't bring up, things we didn't talk about. So without further ado, Connor, I'll let you open up the freezer and get your ice cream out and talk about ice cream.
Well, I want to talk about a little fish tank first.
Shit. Here we go.
So it's a little more subtle in season 4, but in season 5 they really hammered some of the fish tank stuff. So the fish tank first appears when he gets the fish from the vet, which is the only reason he has that fish is so he can talk to the vet, the guy who distributes hooks up people, right? He hooked up Mike with all of the stuff and
yes. Yeah.
And that's why he has the fish.
Why did he see the vet again?
That's how he met Huel. Was through the vet.
Right.
That's how we got his pickpocketer. There was another scene with him though that didn't have to do with Huel. We never saw him.
Is that the one where he was trying to take the statue from the?
Yes, he did go to the vet for that. That's right.
Yeah.
He first went to Mike, and Mike refused, and then he went to.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of shots of the blue hue of the. I don't know if the blue means anything, but you can a lot of times it frames the fish tank as being present in the room with Jimmy and Kim. A lot of times between them. A lot of times the blue shines on Jimmy. That sort of stuff. You kind of get the sense that it's very apparent when he's looking for the price of the statue. He's up and Kim's still in bed. There's a lot of stuff with that. There's the strongest though, the most obvious to me are 3 moments in season 5. So there's a fish tank in the Lalo tapping on the fish tank at the end of season 5, and Jimmy asking him not to do that. That's a big one. Because
so what do you think that symbolizes?
I think that the fish tank represents his dubious, unlawful actions.
Yes.
It's the game is what the fish tank is essentially.
So it would make sense why Lalo would tap on it.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
It's also when Kim and Jimmy are waiting for Mr. X, which is the guy who is played by Trevor from GTA 5.
Yes.
Stephen Ogg.
Jimmy has his hand on the fish tank in the spa, in the nail salon. And Kim's pacing around the room, but Jimmy for a lot of the scene, just has his hand resting on it. Shows them like right next to each other. It's a really cool shot. There's also when they're coming up with the scheme and filming all the people for Wexler versus Goodman, the reflection of the fish tank is through the window is on Kim, and it stays in that shot for quite a bit when she's watching them film. And when Mr. X finally comes in, he looks at the fish tank and says, "Be careful, it's full of parasites." And I think that's the biggest one of all.
That is the biggest one of all. Holy shit!
So that kind of, because again,
calling out the game.
But I these were all theories, but that one, when I watched the episode, I was like, oh, he said the thing. He said that there are parasites in the game, and it's true.
He said the thing.
And it would make sense for his character. Oh, by the way, that character was originally supposed to be Bill Burr. The guy
who's in Breaking Bad.
Yes. It was originally supposed to be him, but he had to attend a friend's funeral, I believe, and so he wasn't able to make it.
No, well, I actually would be shocked if Bill Burr gets introduced in the show, kind of like Huel.
Yeah,
he was supposed
to, like, well, I'm sure he will in the next one because he shows up in Breaking Bad, so it would make sense just to have him be there as a connection because they did it with Huel. But regardless of that, that's a good one. It's a good one. Now, I definitely did notice that, and obviously, he's feeding the fish during the scene with Howard. Mm-hmm. When Howard is grieving, he's like across the bear, and then he like whistling and feeding the fish. Yeah. But he wanted to talk about ice cream, and I do remember a lot of ice cream.
There's no ice cream.
All I have to say, and people who are listening are not going to see this, so I'll tell you what I do after. All I visualize is when you say ice cream, Better Call Saul is just, I wag my finger. It's the thing Nacho does when Saul has the ice cream and he goes to walk in and Nacho's just like,
no, don't bring that in.
I love that. Oh, it's such comedic. Anyway, I guess from this we would talk about the ant scene, which is fucking awesome. But let's go ahead. Ice cream.
Well, ice cream never is really that. It's very specifically green chocolate chip or
yes.
Yeah, it's mentioned. Here's all the scene. I'll tell you what I think it means. I think it means Jimmy's enjoyment of what he's doing. I think that's what it is. It's very much that's what it screams out to me. When the scene in the first episode where Kim is giving the cup and the bag to him that say JMM on it, they're having ice cream, and Jimmy asks one scoop or two, and Kim says one, and he's like, "Oh, I'm having two," and he puts like little sprinkles on it, green chocolate chip sprinkles. Later, he's seen walking down the road, licking it, but he has to drop it. Then obviously the ant scene. Later, he sees it when he's being dropped off from seeing Lalo. Yeah. He sees it devoured by the ants. Then there's also the very, very last episode. Mm-hmm. Kim is asking Jimmy if what he wants on his ice cream, and Jimmy says very specifically, a little of everything. Oh, except for green chocolate chip. And I believe Kim puts green chocolate chip on hers, though. Or whatever it's called. Oh. Yeah.
Mint chocolate chip is what
mint chocolate chip. Mint chocolate chip. Interesting.
Yeah, so those are all the mentions.
So let's talk about that ice cream scene. By the one, I mean the ant one. I fucking love that scene. I love how they Yes, I know. Yeah. I did know that. I did actually know a little bit behind the scenes on this one. And I love that sequence. I think what all right. What do you think what do you think they're saying with that scene? Cuz how I read it is as that before he goes in right before that ice cream scene, I feel like is Saul Goodman is Saul Goodman. But it's once he gets involved with Lalo and Nacho, once he's in the game, it's a big shift. And it's that ice cream he's dropped right before he gets involved, right before he gets in the car with Nacho, and there's no returning from that point onwards. And with the ants eating the ice cream, I feel like that's almost eating. It could be something simple as like eating away his old life, or eating away the old Saul, or it could be something much much different. I'm not sure, but I read that as like a transition from his he's in the game now, and there's no returning. It's almost like a warning, even though the scene is somewhat beautifully done. It's kind of beautifully horrifying, not beautifully ominous.
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely the thrill and the enjoyment he gets out of playing the game. It's the when we see him, he's licking it, he's having a good time. Who forces him to drop it? Nacho. Uh, and he does the whole Lalo thing, and he comes back, and that same ice cream cone is consumed. It's Lalo who's preventing him from enjoying being in the game, right? He's not he was having a great time, like, oh, tricking the judge by switching the witness or the defendant, and all that
I love
stuff.
that scene.
And
Can you point out the defendant? Oh, that's so good. That's such and Kim's watching.
Yeah.
It's so good. That scene has so much weight, has so much like subtle weight to it. It's great. But yeah, it's a good. Everything. Yeah.
He enjoys that. Lalo takes away the enjoyment, and then at the end, he doesn't feel like he should be allowed to enjoy what he's doing, because of everything that's happened. I think that's why he doesn't ask for the sprinkles. It's such a weird show that we can like. Oh yeah, he didn't ask for sprinkles. This means that. Well, but I mean, it makes sense in some. It feels
it's good. It's so good. Oh man,
repeated imagery is is the strength of TV shows in general, so that you can keep calling back to something.
And Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul just do such a good job implementing repeated imagery. I mean, we see it constantly. All right. These are side notes. Anything, we talk about anything. We talk about stuff we didn't bring up, scenes we didn't bring up, characters we didn't bring up. We didn't really talk much about like Hector, for example, or we can bring up like criticisms of the show, stuff we might have problems with, like scenes we might not like or moments. I don't know, whatever you guys want to bring up that we have yet to talk about. To wrap it all up.
I'm going to limit myself because I feel like I could talk so much longer, and that would be unfair to everybody involved. I think
I'm having a blast, but
that yeah. So there's sure I'll get some criticism.
Okay.
I just again, it's all opinion, blah blah blah. Nothing's objective.
Yeah.
I find myself much more interested in the Jimmy side than the Mike side of the show. That's just a kind of a interest thing. I'm not saying that the Mike side's bad at all.
No,
I really enjoy it, but I find myself much more compelled by the kind of the Jimmy side of the show.
I agree. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
I think that Mike says to Gus in season 5, "I don't believe that fear is an effective motivator," which is something that Gus said to Mike in Breaking Bad. I thought that was a little too cute, a little too on the nose. Oh, Mike taught Gus to say that. I mean,
okay.
In Breaking Bad, you didn't get the feeling that it was a repeated phrase. It wasn't Gus calling back to. Again, all of these are actually really little, tiny things.
Yeah, of course. They're not like he said that therefore show ruined. I understand. Yeah, we're just giving some analysis.
The scene where it shows young Jimmy, there's the guy who comes in, who's pretending that his car broke down and wants money, and the dad leaves, and Jimmy ends up giving him the money, and the guy says, "There are sheep and wolves in this world. Choose which one you're going to be." I think that was a little too on the nose.
I think they could have not had him said that and just have him leave and say that visually, with like Jimmy looking at him being like, huh, and then seeing his dad not realize it's a scheme, and they could have just did that.
All my criticisms
that I do agree that scene lacked a little subtlety for me. Okay, can I be honest with you? I don't mind the scene where Mike and Jimmy are talking. This is when they're in the car post this is season 5 post being stuck in the desert for 2 days, where they're talking in the car. And I do like where Jimmy's like, I can't believe you're the only person who I can talk to about this. It's funny. But the whole part where he mentions the analogy of like the bad choice road, I don't think that really hits for me. I don't know. Like, I just think like the whole, like the terminology of bad choice road just feels a little on the, like you have 2 roads to go down. It just feels a little too simple for me. I don't know. It doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they could have used a better analogy.
I will say he never says bad choice road. When Jimmy's messing up the speech with Kim, that's when bad choice road is said. It's meant to be kind of clumsy, that phrasing of it, bad choice road.
Okay.
It's Mike says something along the lines of, "We all make choices, we're on the road, blah blah blah." I understand you mean. And then
Yeah, I
just
think
find
that
it funny
analogy itself
yeah.
is no, I know, no, I didn't. I thought that Mike said that, but I do think the part where Jimmy brings that back is kind of clever and funny because I think that was kind of like because I do remember him like the whole joke is that he butchers it and Kim's like, what the fuck are you talking about? But I just think like besides bringing it back, like Mike's speech itself, like it just doesn't really hit me. Like it felt a little like too on the nose. Like it was like it felt a little too like, which I guess you could just be well, that's Mike. It doesn't. It's not like the show is making that point. It's Mike is making that point. But I don't know. He's trying to help Jimmy. I don't know. Like that I just remember that scene. Like I was just like, it didn't really.
I absolutely understand that. Yeah, I don't know. I like it a lot. I would say the part of the reason I think I like it so much is that it ties. I love the fact that it ties into El Camino, like that idea of driving, like the final shot of El Camino and the first shot of El Camino, that type of thing. And also, there were 3 shots in Breaking Bad that were framed exactly the same way, of Jesse in the passenger seat. It just ties into Jesse so much for me. Jesse in the passenger seat of Walt, and then the passenger seat of Mike, and then the passenger seat of Hank, and then it's him driving by himself. That made me like that. Made me like that speech, maybe more than I should have. But I mean, you know.
Something we never bring up because why would we bring it up? And actually, I really love about this about Better Call Saul. It's so simple. Is the intro, and how each time there's a different image for the intro, and like coincides with the episodes. But what are they going to do for season 6? There's 13 episodes. They're going to have 3 extra ones.
Yeah. Well, that's why people have been predicting the last 3 episodes are going to be all black and white scenes. I don't know if that's going to happen. But
I don't think that would be.
I don't know if there's enough in the black and white. Depends on what they do, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think.
So.
Yeah.
I guess they have to really have a lot. But
they ordered 13 episodes before they wrote it, so they just wanted a little extra.
They knew they had. Yeah. But regardless, I just want to say I like those intros. I like how they show that they're flash forwards to the Breaking Bad days. But they usually show. Like I think I like one that sticks in my head is like the Better Call Saul like paper being in the urinal. Like
the matchbook, yeah.
The matchbook, yeah. That is like a good like almost like symbolism of like where he ends up. I like those a lot, and I like how there's a different one for each episode, or I guess each episode of each season. Or
it's the same. It's the same intro for each season. For each episode season. 1, each episode 2 is the same intro. Except it's much more. It's more degraded every time. It's as if it's a tape that's been played over and over again, which is what Saul's doing at the very beginning of the show.
I love it.
Which I really like.
It's just a cool little touch. Not that the Breaking Bad intro is bad, but it's way more interesting.
I also like with the intro theme, like the way the title the title music cuts out at the end of it. It's a very abrupt cut. It doesn't.
It doesn't quite finish.
Right.
It's like
exactly.
Yeah, it's great.
There is a full version, like 2-minute version of the song.
People will have heard that at the beginning of this podcast.
Oh, nice.
That's the music I'll use to transfer from the intro that I will record before this to now. Anyway, go ahead.
Do you remember Breaking Bad's how Breaking Bad played the full song at the end of the last episode? People are predicting the same thing's going to happen with the intro to Better Call Saul.
Maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't have any feelings on it until I see it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that just depends on the context of the scene, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's possible.
All right. Anything else we did not talk about?
Sure, I got tons.
Connor's like, all right, let me get out my 18-page document. Now, let me tell you. No. I say we'll do 2 more things, and then we got to end it off.
Yeah,
just because we've been recording now for
nearing 4 hours.
Yeah, I know it's been a long time.
We are 20 seconds away from 4 hours.
It's my bread and butter.
I know. I love it. I'm having a blast, but we definitely should, for the sake of my editing self, before I go mad when I'm editing.
Okay, so I love the juxtaposition between the 2 bottle scenes in season 5 when they have the bottles. They're on their overhang outside their apartment, Kim and Jimmy. And the first time they're doing it, the scenes are mirrored where it's the exact same shots, except one time Kim's coming home and the other time Jimmy's coming home. The second time it happens, Kim's coming home from talking to Mr. Acker, and it's Jimmy kind of play. The first time she's really nervous about the bottle. It's nothing said, but she's like looking at the bottle on the edge.
Yeah.
The second time, there's no words at all during the scene. During a whole 2 to 3 minute scene, there's no words. And it's just Jimmy like dropping like catching the bottle, right? And she takes a bottle and just chucks it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he does the same, and they're having fun, and they go back into the room. The next episode, she's like, last night was fun, but let's not do that. And she's the one who cleans it up.
She's the one who always cleans up the mess.
Yep.
Exactly the same thing. It happened in the very first episode when he kicks the trash can, and she's the one who puts it back up.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't Chuck say like, or someone said like, I thought that it was spoken like someone always has to clean up his mess. I don't know. I thought that
it was Kim and Jimmy's argument on the top of the.
Yes, that's what it was.
It's like who's there at a moment's notice? Who cleans up your messes? She does something like that.
And then we see her actually do it more than once throughout the show. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, she does in the first episode, which is some crazy. I remember when I was rewatching the show and with my family, and I saw that, I was like, "Oh, that's such a big theme! Wow!" Like she does it in her very first scene. It's a scene I appreciated when Jimmy is being told that he didn't get the job by Howard in a flashback, like the blue tint. They're having a party. It's all one take. Having a party. Howard comes in. He forces everyone else to leave instead of just taking Jimmy aside, which I always thought was kind of funny.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I think that probably for filming purposes, but it works for his character too.
Don't we? Isn't that before we learn?
Yes, it is.
So that's probably why.
In episode 8, I believe, of season 1.
So that makes sense because when you see that of him saying everyone get out, it sort of implies that Howard is being sort of more like he's got kind of being more despicable than we realize he is. You know what I mean? Like it would be kind of, if you pulled him aside, you might think like, oh, what is he saying to him? But the fact is like everyone out, it sort of makes you might like lead you to believe like, oh, Howard's the one behind him not getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In hindsight's 2020, if you watch Chuck's acting in that scene, you can tell he's not really that enthused about.
I have seen. So I've watched the show entirely once, and then I watched a couple people like reaction and commentary to it. So I've seen the show pretty much twice, maybe like not like concretely twice, but
because they're long episodes.
Yeah, it's so good though. So good. And like I know there are people that like, you know, I know people who I'll get to know, and I'll be like, all right, let's watch Better. We gotta watch Better Call Saul. Like, cause I want to show this show to people.
Yeah.
I'll be very proud to show this show off. Not that I had anything to do with it, but just be like, this was a show that I got to experience. And you know what's crazy? Season 6 of Better Call Saul, the last season of the show, is going to be the first season of either Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul that I watch live.
Oh yeah.
Because season 5 was coming out. When season 5 was coming out, I was done with Breaking Bad, but I was on a break. I wasn't starting Better Call Saul because I was still chewing on Breaking Bad.
When we had our discussion from May last year, you hadn't started it, I believe.
When we were having our discussion, the season 5 of Better Call Saul was currently airing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was.
A couple episodes in.
That's right.
So since then, obviously since then I've seen them all, but so I never got to watch one live. So season 6 is going to be my first time. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's exciting. I guess I don't know how I'll feel because I won't be able to be like next episode. Like I'll just have to watch it and wait a week.
Yeah, that was me with season 5.
But see, I think that might be good for me because that will give me to chew on it. Because like I'll watch a whole season and it's just like, you know what I mean? Like it's so much and I'm like, oh. I did take a break between 4 and 5 because 5 isn't on Netflix and I had to use Bob's actual Amazon account.
Because I bought it.
But I was kind of like, I'm gonna take a break between 4 and 5 because the ending of 4 kind of fucked me up. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. This is one of the first shows I usually have a policy that I'll wait for a show to end before starting to watch it.
Well,
like to complete. I didn't with this one, and I'll be absolutely 100% honest. I legitimately regret not waiting until it was done because these last 2 years have been torture for me. It's been insanely
I guess for
tough.
me, I finished this in I started it in like last summer.
Yeah.
It's like September. Actually, I think I started about a year after I started Breaking Bad. Yeah. And I finished it way earlier than Breaking Bad. I want to say I finished it in like November maybe or something like that. So it's been, like not that long for me. It hasn't even been a year since I finished the show. So I guess like for me, it's not that bad, but I don't regret it. Because for me, I don't regret watching these 5 seasons because they've given me so much to chew on. At least because now I feel like by the time I'm done and I'm like, all right, I finally understand everything, season 6 will come out.
No. I will say the advantage is that I can't be spoiled for what I've seen, right? Because the longer you wait to see something, the more likely it is you're going to get spoiled.
Well, so for me, I got that Gus was in it. That got spoiled for me. I guess Mike, but that's episode 1, so I don't count that. And then the other thing is I didn't get spoiled that Hank was in it, but by the time he was around, I got spoiled that a character from Breaking Bad returned in season 5, and it was a big deal. And from that, I pretty much deduced it was Hank.
Yeah, they put it in the trailer. I disagree.
They put it in the trailer.
Oh my, yeah. They announced it was a big. Yeah, the writer commented on the trailer and said, "Yeah, okay, I kept the secret for like 9 months just for it to be put in a trailer." Okay.
They
like
put that in the trailer.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, Hank and Gomi in a trailer.
Why? That's awful.
I don't think that it's the same department as the people who make the show.
I know it's not, but that was a terrible decision. That's
That's
probably just from you guys saying that. I don't think I'm gonna watch the trailer for season 6.
Yeah, I never spoil myself, and I've been looking at all the leaks and stuff, and I'm not gonna say anything, I promise. But
stop it.
I don't know why I've been doing it. Like it's like I need an injection of. It's like crack. I'm so addicted.
Yeah. These little. It's like no, it's not crack.
These little nuggets of, that's it's
meth.
Hardly any of it I can piece together, but the part that I have pieced together is like, oh boy.
I think I understand it too because there's way less Better Call Saul discussions there on YouTube, and there's way less content about it.
I need my.
Except for this, make sure to like and subscribe for more content.
This has been my big hit of Better Call Saul.
Yeah, there you go. You can't watch it, make it. But also we will definitely we have to do this for season 6. We have to. We have.
I don't know. I mean, I might not even be able to wait until the full season's out. I might need to like a quick message like, "What do you think of the last episode?"
Yeah,
it's
just talk off stream.
Yeah,
like, it's recording.
Yeah, it's so. I have a feeling the weeks are going to be torture. It's the reason some people didn't like the Fly episode is because they waited a week for this addicting television show and then nothing happened, right? So I can understand that, but
I get it. Except they're wrong because it's one of the best episodes of the show. But whatever.
It's pretty good.
It's it's my favorite probably. It's close with Ozymandias, but whatever. We can watch our Breaking Bad discussion for that. Anyway, I guess we'll end it off there. We gotta end it off somewhere. Although it just feels so tough because we talked about a lot, but also nothing. We talked for over 4 hours, and I feel like we've touched just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
We barely mentioned we mentioned it, but we barely really talked about like Hector. We barely talked about like so many scenes and moments because it's impossible.
The big show.
It's impossible. It's yeah. What do you how do you even do it?
Feels like all the details come back, and then that thing from all the way in that season that's coming back, and the plot is not as intricate as Breaking Bad, but it is. I feel like I've been sucked in more somehow. I don't know how to describe it. To me, again, this is I am. Here's how I'll sum this up. Sometimes it feels like I feel like the show was made for me in the terms of all of my very specific likes of cinema and acting and symbolism. It feels like it's the show that sums it all up. Like it's the show that I've seen do the best in all of these areas. And it's the type of cinematography is my favorite type, like kind of the wide shot, still, no shaky cam type stuff. I think I love Breaking Bad cinematography, but I will say I don't think shaky cam is aged as well as some of the other elements. The fact that it's always handheld, it looks fine, but it's something very clean. There's something very clean and precise about the cinematography of Better Call Saul.
here's what I'll tell you. I think we talked about this in our Breaking Bad discussion, which is why you should go watch that. I'm sure you already have.
Do it. Go.
Watch this. We talked about in that discussion how Breaking Bad was, at least I said, I think Breaking Bad was the start of like a new era of television. And I think that Better Call Saul is, even though it's made largely by the same people, it's a response to that. In that show really, and not that, so we talked about this, we know there were shows before, like shows with like rich cinematography and film like attributes. Not the first one, not even close. But like The Sopranos and stuff. But I did want to say that I feel like Better Call Saul takes advantage of that. Like Breaking Bad started it, or not started it, but really revolutionized it, I think. And Better Call Saul really took advantage of that and uses because TV for a while was never even closely production-wise or just generally on the same level of a film ever. Like they were so wildly different, like how they were filmed, like how they were mostly, like how the studios changed, how they would oftentimes use 3 cameras, like everything was just so different. And I mean, I think Breaking Bad, obviously Game of Thrones, all of that influenced a very, cinematic way of creating television. And I think Better Call Saul for me is the magnum opus of that. It may not have the same scale of Game of Thrones or even Breaking Bad for that matter, but the way it uses camera movements and colors, the way it uses cinematography, the way it shows and uses filmmaking to tell a story and enhance character development and thematic elements coming back is just, for me, unmatched. And not to say that makes the show better than Breaking Bad, because for me, that doesn't matter. Like which one's better for me, it's a pointless discussion. Yeah. Because they're so drastically different, and I don't think anyone's trying to be better than the other one. But I think what this show does is it clearly learns a lot from Breaking Bad and goes in a way different direction and utilizes it in a much different way that I appreciate just as much, and in some ways even more than Breaking Bad. My way of saying it is I fucking love this show.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like a precise arrow aimed at my love of cinema.
Yeah, absolutely. This, for me, I'll be honest with you, this is the best prequel spin-off show I've ever seen.
Yeah, this very much shows how to do a spin-off show well. Turn something that people thought was just, you're making a spin-off show of a quirky side character who was just comedic relief, and turning it into something amazing.
Right.
And something that has a chance to be more than the original show.
Of course, the only spin-off show in prequel that is more ambitious would be Young Sheldon. I have to give credit.
Of course, yes.
The masterpiece that is Young. No, no. What I'm saying is that example is like, it's a fucking cash grab. Obviously, I mean it's a spin-off show of a show. It's garbage. But regardless of that being the point, my point is like, I'll be honest with you guys. When I was watching Breaking Bad and I heard about Better Call Saul, I didn't think it was that, but a part of me was like, it's just a spin-off Breaking Bad. Like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like, that's really what I thought. Because I'm so used to spin-off shows just being that, spin-off shows. It's like,
exact same reaction I had.
We gotta milk this brand for everything we got. What can we do? And someone's like, but we do a spin-off show where we take a character from a show, we grab a Young Sheldon, we put this fucking guy over here, and they do that. And that's honestly how I feel about the Game of Thrones spin-off coming up, even though, I obviously have a very complicated relationship with the whole fucking whatever. How can you whatever. Okay. But Breaking Bad was so perfect to me. Even though you guys told me it was good, so I expected it to be good. Like, even before you guys told me and I just heard about it, I thought of it as a spinoff. I do not think of when you say Better Call Saul, spinoff is the last thing I think of. It's the last thing I think of. I do not think, when someone's talking about Better Call Saul, I'm like, oh yeah, the spinoff show, Breaking Bad. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, it's its own thing. Yeah. Like, if someone's like, let's talk about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, I'd be like, whoa, buddy, which one?
Which one?
We can't do both. Like, that's what a spin-off show should be. Spin-off. It should be its own thing. It should be have its own identity and not rely too much on the other one. And I think Better Call Saul does that to a T.
Yeah, I've talked to so many people in real life about Breaking Bad, but this show is so much more niche. I don't think I've hardly ever talked to anyone about Better Call Saul. Obviously not to the depth that we have now, but
and it makes sense for the character, for the themes of how subtle the show is, a nuance it is. It would make sense to me.
It's not for everyone, and that's fine.
And that's fine.
I'm glad it exists.
and I'm not trying to make fun of the wide mass appeal of Breaking Bad, because I think it deserves that. But a lot of people I talk to Breaking Bad with won't talk to me about the cinematography and the colors and the nuance of the show, which is fine, because that's not for everybody. You know, I don't expect everyone to be... You know, right now on my YouTube channel, I'm doing a tier list for Pixar videos and stuff, and I'm kind of like doing that, like really analyzing Pixar films. And sometimes people are like, "It's a fucking kids movie. Who the fuck? Like, why?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. Like, you can just watch this movie and enjoy it. I understand." But this is what I like to do. So for me, Better Call Saul feels like those elements of Breaking Bad, but it's the whole show. And I think ultimately makes it less mass, have less mass appeal, but for me also makes it way more, have way more, not I don't want to say it has way more anything, but it just has so much substance and it has so much rich nature to it that Breaking Bad of course has. They both have it, but in a much different way.
Yeah, I see them as pretty equal at this point. In my kind of hierarchy of shows, but I probably just need to watch more shows.
I say I like Breaking Bad more only because it ended. And I can't say anything about.
You're right. You can't. Yet. I think the heights of again, it's so hard to compare. The heights of emotions is to Breaking Bad for sure for me.
I agree.
Better Call Saul.
I don't think I've seen any, but I also don't think I've seen any scene in television that affected me like the crawl space scene did.
Yeah.
But that's just because I don't think that can ever happen. It's too fucking good.
People, or that or in the whole episode of Ozymandias. The everyone's like, oh, what's going to be the Ozymandias of Better Call Saul? I don't think it needs one. I mean, I think what they're doing is they're not being influenced by what other people want the show to be. The people
no, they're definitely not. Which is why
they're doing their own thing.
Which is why it feels like there's only a tiny bit of fan service, like introducing Hank or introducing Gus, but those moments still have a story purpose and they pay out. They have a payoff. Which is good.
It has no right to be as good as it is, but I'm really glad.
There we go. That is our discussion for Better Call Saul. Woo. You better call Saul, and you better call your mother. See how she's doing. Make sure she's all right. All right. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you all so much for watching, listening to the Better Call Saul Seasons 1 through 5 review and discussion. I appreciate it. And don't worry, there will be more Better Call Saul discussions. We will definitely do a Season 6 discussion and may even follow that up with a series discussion. Check out the Breaking Bad discussion if you've yet to see it already. I think it is maybe not as good as this one, but it's pretty decent. And I would recommend checking it out to see what we think in depth about Breaking Bad. I'm also doing a series here on YouTube where I am going through each Pixar film and ranking them and discussing them. I kind of use the same in-depth tactics we use here to discuss that. It's much different content, but some of you that appreciate this video may appreciate that, so go make sure to check that out as well. I also have a Twitch page down below. That's where I do most of my content. So check that out if you enjoy this discussion. I would love to talk to you guys while I'm live streaming about Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. We always have in-depth TV discussions while I'm playing games or doing the podcast, so go check that out. And overall, I just want to thank you all so much for watching. Consider subscribing, liking, commenting. Let's have a discussion down below. I love talking to you guys, and until the next time, we'll see you all later.